The rain came down in sheets the day they buried Caroline Bennett, turning the cemetery grounds into a landscape of gray and mud and sorrow. Tom stood beneath a black umbrella that did nothing to keep the cold from seeping into his bones, watching the priest's mouth move through words that meant everything and nothing at the same time. Beside him, his 10-year-old twins stood like small soldiers at attention. Abby clutched a sketchbook to her chest, the one her mother had given her last Christmas. Sam held his sister's free hand, his jaw set in that way he had when he was trying very hard not to cry. The crowd at St. Michael's Cathedral had been larger than Tom expected. Caroline's colleagues from the architecture firm, where she had worked before the illness, teachers from the twins' school, neighbors from their street in the Boston suburb where they had lived for 8 years. But standing across from Tom, separated by the expanse of the grave and what felt like an ocean of ice, were Victoria and Richard Westfield, Caroline's parents, the grandparents who had not visited during the final 6 months, who had sent flowers to the hospital with cards signed by assistants, who stood now in their expensive black coats looking like they were attending a business function rather than burying their only child. Victoria's face was a mask of careful makeup and controlled emotion. Richard stood slightly behind her, his hands clasped in front of him, his eyes fixed on the casket as if he could will it to open and return his daughter to the living. Between Tom's family and the Westfields, there might as well have been a wall of glass, visible but impenetrable, separate but painfully close. The priest finished his benediction. People began to move away from the gravesite, murmuring condolences that Tom heard as if through water. Abby's teacher, Mrs. Reynolds, touched his arm gently. "If you need anything," she said, "anything at all." Tom nodded because words required energy he didn't have. The line of people offering sympathy seemed endless. Former colleagues, parents from the school, Father Patrick O'Brien from St. Michael's, who had sat with Caroline during her final days when Tom needed to be with the children. "She was a remarkable woman," Father Patrick said, his Irish accent soft with genuine grief. "She had such faith, not just in God, but in you, in your family. Remember that in the days ahead, as if time still meant something, as if there was a future that made sense without Caroline in it." When most of the crowd had dispersed, Victoria and Richard approached. Victoria moved with the careful precision of someone navigating a formal event. Richard followed like a shadow, present but not quite there. "Thomas," Victoria said. She had never called him Tom. "Thomas, we need to discuss arrangements." "Arrangements," Tom repeated. The word felt foreign in his mouth. "For the children," Victoria clarified. "Obviously, you'll need help. We've prepared the guest house at the estate. It has 3 bedrooms. The children can have their own space and you'll have privacy while you sort things out." "Sort things out," Tom echoed. He felt like he was speaking a language he didn't fully understand. Richard finally spoke, his voice gentler than his wife's. "It's a difficult time. Victoria just wants to help. We both do." Sam's hand tightened in Tom's. Abby pressed closer to his side. They could feel the current running beneath the conversation. The unspoken things that children always sense before adults acknowledge them. "Thank you," Tom said carefully. "But we'll be fine at home. The kids need familiar things right now. Their rooms, their routines." Victoria's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course, for now, but Thomas, we should talk. Soon, there are practical matters that need addressing." She handed him a business card, her personal number handwritten on the back. "Call me tomorrow, please." They left in a black town car that probably cost more than Tom made in a year. He watched them go and felt Abby shiver against him. "I don't like Grandma Victoria," she whispered. "Abby," Tom started. "It's okay, Dad," Sam said with a wisdom that seemed too old for 10. "We don't have to like everyone. Mom said that. She said we just have to be kind." The house felt wrong without Caroline. Tom had known it would, had prepared himself for the emptiness. But knowing and experiencing were different countries entirely. He moved through rooms that echoed with her absence. The kitchen where she had taught Abby to make pancakes. The living room where she and Sam had built elaborate structures with blocks and cardboard. The bedroom where Tom could still smell her shampoo on the pillow. The twins went to their rooms without being asked. Abby to draw, Sam to read, both of them processing in their own ways. Tom stood in the kitchen and stared at the refrigerator, covered with Abby's artwork and Sam's math tests, in the calendar where Caroline had marked orthodontist appointments and parent-teacher conferences, and all the small, ordinary moments that made up a life. He needed to eat, needed to make sure the kids ate, but his body felt disconnected from his brain. He was reaching for the phone to order pizza when he saw the envelope. It was propped against the coffee maker. Plain white. His name written in Caroline's careful handwriting. The sight of it hit him like a physical blow. His hand shook as he opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Her words, her voice reaching across the void. My dearest Tom, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you're trying to figure out how to keep breathing. I know you'll be blaming yourself for things you couldn't control. Stop. You gave me 13 beautiful years. You gave me 2 incredible children. You gave me a life full of love and meaning and joy. That's everything. But Tom, I need you to listen carefully. The house, the money, things are not what they seem. I tried to protect you from this while I was alive. I thought I had more time. I didn't. Victoria will come for the children. Not because she loves them, though I believe in her own way she does, but because she can't bear losing control. She lost control of me when I chose you, when I chose a simple life over the Westfield empire. She won't make that mistake with Sam and Abby. Please forgive me for what I had to hide. Trust that everything I did, every choice I made, was because I believed in you more than you believe in yourself. With all my love, Carrie. Tom read the letter 3 times. Each time it made less sense. What did she mean the house wasn't what it seemed? They had bought it together 8 years ago. Small but comfortable. A good neighborhood, good schools. They had painted every room themselves. Built the deck in the backyard, planted the garden. He went to the filing cabinet where Caroline had kept their important papers. The deed should be there, should show both their names. Should prove that whatever Caroline was worried about was just the confusion of illness and medication and fear. But when he found the deed, his stomach dropped. The property was held in trust. Westfield Family Trust. His name appeared nowhere on the document. In the margin, in Caroline's handwriting, was a single word. Sorry. Tom sat on the floor of the home office, surrounded by papers, and tried to understand what he was seeing. They had lived here for 8 years. He had paid the mortgage every month. Half his salary went to this house. His children had grown up here. How could it not be his? The explanation came in a folder marked House Purchase. Inside were documents showing that the down payment had come from a Westfield family account. The monthly payments Tom had been making went into an escrow account managed by Westfield Properties. He had been paying rent to his in-laws for 8 years without knowing it. He thought about all the times Caroline had handled the finances, had paid the bills, had told him not to worry about the details. She was better with money, she had said, better with paperwork. He had trusted her completely. And now he understood why she had apologized. The twins were asleep when Victoria called. Tom answered on the 4th ring, still sitting in the office, still trying to process what he had discovered. Thomas, Victoria said, I hope I'm not calling too late. It's fine. I wanted to follow up on our conversation. About the living arrangements. Tom's grip tightened on the phone. We're staying here. In our home. There was a pause, then Victoria's voice, carefully controlled. Thomas, I think there's been a misunderstanding. That house is Westfield property. Caroline had usage rights during her lifetime. Those rights weren't transferable. The words hit like punches. Usage rights, not transferable. Legal language that meant he had no claim to the place where his children had grown up. You're saying we don't own this house, Tom said flatly. I'm saying the situation is complicated, which is why I think it would be best if you move to the estate temporarily, while we sort out the details. There was kindness in her voice, or what passed for kindness in Victoria's world. But underneath it was steel, an assumption that Tom would do the reasonable thing, the practical thing, the thing that acknowledged his place in the Westfield hierarchy. I need time to think, Tom said. Of course. Take a few days. But Thomas, the children need stability. They've lost their mother. The least we can do is ensure they don't lose their home as well. After she hung up, Tom sat in the darkness and thought about stability, about what it meant and what it cost. The Westfields could give his children material security, the estate, private schools, every advantage money could buy. But at what price? He remembered the first time he had brought Caroline home to meet his parents. His father was a carpenter who had built their small house with his own hands. His mother taught piano lessons in the living room. They had welcomed Caroline like a daughter. No questions about her background or her family's money. Just kindness and acceptance and good food served on mismatched plates. When Tom had gone to meet the Westfields, the reception had been decidedly different. The Westfield estate in Newton was everything his childhood home was not. Massive, elegant, designed to impress, Victoria had given him a tour that felt more like an inspection. Richard had asked careful questions about Tom's career prospects. The message had been clear. You're not good enough for our daughter. But Caroline had chosen him anyway, had married him in a small ceremony that Victoria had tried to turn into a society event, had insisted on living simply despite having access to unlimited wealth, had wanted their children to grow up understanding the value of things earned rather than inherited. And now she was gone, and Tom was alone trying to honor her wishes while navigating a world he didn't fully understand. The next morning, he called in sick to school, something he never did. His students needed him. His lesson plans needed to be taught, but his children needed him more. He made them breakfast, pancakes that came out too thick because he couldn't remember Caroline's recipe. The twins ate without complaining. Sam asked if he could stay home from school too. Not today, buddy. You need routine. Normal things. Nothing's normal anymore, Sam said quietly. Tom had no answer for that. He dropped them at Quincy Middle School and watched them walk through the doors, backpacks too heavy, shoulders too tense. Then he drove to the address on Robert Matthews' business card. Robert Matthews, attorney at law, occupied a suite in a downtown Boston building that smelled like old money and older secrets. The receptionist was expecting him. Please have a seat. Mr. Matthews will be with you shortly. The wait gave Tom time to study the oil paintings on the walls. Ships, sailing ships from another era. Everything in this office spoke of tradition and continuity and families who measured their wealth in centuries rather than years. Mr. Bennett, Robert Matthews was younger than Tom expected. Maybe 45, wire-rimmed glasses, kind eyes, a handshake that was firm without being aggressive. Thank you for coming. I know this is a difficult time. His office was lined with law books and family photos. A wife, 2 daughters, golden retriever. The kind of normal life that seemed impossible to Tom right now. I'm not sure why I'm here, Tom admitted. Your card said you represented Caroline's estate. Robert nodded slowly. I do. Your wife hired me 18 months ago, shortly after her diagnosis. 18 months. The whole length of her illness. Caroline had been planning something all that time. She was very specific about her wishes, Robert continued, and very concerned about certain scenarios. He pulled out a file, thick, official-looking. Mr. Bennett, I need to ask you some questions. Have the Westfields contacted you about living arrangements? Tom's laugh was bitter. You could say that. Apparently, I don't own my own house. No, Robert said gently. You don't. The property is held in the Westfield Family Trust. Carolyn lived there at the discretion of her parents. You live there at the discretion of your wife. So what happens now? Robert was quiet for a moment. Then he said, that depends on several factors. But I need to tell you something. Caroline established a separate trust, independent of the Westfield family holdings. It's substantial, approximately $285 million. The number was so large it didn't seem real. Tom stared at the lawyer, certain he had misheard. I'm sorry, what? $285 million, Robert repeated. Inherited from her maternal grandmother, kept separate from the main Westfield estate. Your wife was very careful about this. Tom's mind was reeling. Caroline had been worth nearly $300 million, and they had lived in a modest house and shopped at Target and worried about the grocery budget. Why didn't she tell me, he managed. Because there were conditions, Robert said carefully. Conditions I'm not at liberty to fully disclose yet. But I can tell you this. Your wife believed you were strong enough to do what needed to be done. She believed in you completely. What needs to be done? You need to survive 18 months from the date of her death without accepting financial assistance from the Westfields. If you can do that, the full trust becomes available to you and the children. If you accept their help in any form, the money goes to charity. Tom felt like he was in a dream, a nightmare, some alternate reality where his wife's death came with game rules and conditions. She set this up, he said slowly. She knew Victoria would try to take the kids. She knew her mother, Robert confirmed. She knew exactly how this would play out, and she wanted to prove something. To Victoria, to the world, but most importantly, to you. Prove what? That you're enough, that you can provide for your children through character and determination. That the Westfield name and money don't define your worth or theirs. Tom stood up, needing to move, needing air. This is insane. It's unusual, Robert agreed. But it was your wife's wish, and Mr. Bennett, I should tell you, I'll be observing, not intrusively, But Caroline wanted documentation. She wanted proof of how the children thrive with you, evidence that could be presented if necessary. Presented to who? To anyone who questions your fitness as a parent. The implication was clear. Victoria, courts, anyone who might try to take his children away. Tom walked to the window, looked down at the Boston streets full of people living normal lives. People who didn't have to navigate trust funds and surveillance and tests designed by dead wives. What if I fail? He asked quietly. Robert's reflection appeared in the window beside him. Then the money goes to charity, and you've still raised your children with integrity and love. That's not failure, Mr. Bennett. That's parenting. The eviction notice arrived 3 days later. Official letterhead, legal language. 48 hours to vacate the premises. Tom read it standing in the kitchen, where he had made coffee every morning for 8 years, where Abby had taken her first steps, where Sam had announced he wanted to be a scientist, where Caroline had told him she was pregnant. 48 hours. He called a lawyer, not Robert Matthews, who couldn't represent him in this, but a family law attorney recommended by Father Patrick. The consultation was brief and brutal. They have legal standing, the attorney said. The house is theirs. You were living there as a guest. Technically, you're a tenant at will. They can terminate that at any time. There has to be something. There is. You can fight it in court, but that will take months and cost money you probably don't have, and in the end, you'll likely lose anyway. Tom hung up and looked around the house that wasn't his, at the rooms he had painted, the floors he had refinished, the memories built into every corner. Abby found him there, standing in the middle of the living room like a man drowning on dry land. Dad, are we going to have to leave? He wanted to lie, wanted to promise everything would be okay. But Caroline had taught him that children deserve truth delivered with love. Yes, sweetheart, we are. Where will we go? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. Together. She was quiet for a moment. Then she opened her sketchbook and showed him a drawing. It was their family. Caroline, Abby, and Sam. But Caroline was drawn in lighter pencil, almost transparent, like she was fading away but still there. Mom told me something, Abby said, before she died. She said that home isn't a place, it's people. She said as long as we have each other, we'll always have home. Tom pulled his daughter close and tried very hard not to cry. The next day, Margaret Chen appeared at their door. She was a small woman, maybe 70, with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too much sorrow to be fooled by polite lies. She owned the alteration shop 2 streets over. Carolyn had gone there for years to get clothes hemmed and repaired. Mr. Bennett, she said, I heard about your situation. I may be able to help. Tom invited her in because refusing kindness seemed wrong even when accepting it felt like admitting defeat. Margaret sat at their kitchen table and explained about a house. Her nephew's friend had owned it, had moved to Arizona for health reasons. The place needed work, a lot of work, but it was available. Cheap rent in exchange for repairs, a rent-to-own possibility if things worked out. It's in Quincy, she said. Not the best neighborhood, not the worst. The schools are decent, the neighbors look out for each other. She slid a key across the table. Old-fashioned, brass, the kind they didn't make anymore. Why would you do this? Tom asked. You barely know me. Margaret's face softened with something that might have been memory or might have been pain. I know grief, she said. I know what it's like to lose someone and have to keep going. I know what it's like when people think money is the solution to everything and they're wrong. She stood to leave. You have 2 days before they make you go. Use them wisely. Pack what matters. Leave what doesn't. And Mr. Bennett, remember that things can be replaced. People can't. That night, Tom sat his children down and told them everything. About the house belonging to the Westfields. About having to move. About the new place that would be different and harder, but would be theirs. Sam listened with his analytical mind already working through logistics. Abby drew while he talked, her pencil moving across the page in quick, angry strokes. When he finished, Sam asked the question Tom had been dreading. Is this because we're poor now? Tom thought about the $285 million he couldn't touch. About the test Caroline had designed. About proving worth without wealth. We're not poor, he said carefully. We just don't have a lot of extra money right now. There's a difference. The kids at school will think we're poor, Abby said quietly. Then they'll be wrong, Tom replied. Being poor is about not having what you need. We have what we need. We have each other. Sam met his eyes. You really believe that? Tom thought about his childhood, his carpenter father, his piano teacher mother, the small house full of love and laughter and enough. Not excess, not luxury, but enough. Yeah, he said, I really do. The packing was harder than Tom expected. Every object held memory. Every choice about what to keep and what to leave felt like a small death. The kids' baby clothes Caroline had saved, the wedding china they had used twice, the books, the photographs, the thousand small pieces of a life built together. Victoria called twice. Tom didn't answer. He couldn't bear to hear her careful explanations about why this was all for the best, about stability and resources and practical considerations. On the final morning, Tom stood in the empty house and said goodbye to the ghosts, to Caroline making pancakes in the kitchen, to Abby learning to ride a bike in the driveway, to Sam building a fort in the living room, to all the ordinary moments that had made up their extraordinary life. A moving truck arrived, not professional movers, just the truck. Tom and Father Patrick and two teachers from his school loaded their belongings. What fit in the truck? The rest went to donation, furniture too big for a smaller house, kitchen equipment they couldn't use, pieces of their former life that didn't translate to their future. The twins sat on the front steps watching. Abby drew the house one final time. Sam made a list of everything going into the truck, both of them coping in their own ways. "You ready?" Father Patrick asked gently. "No," Tom said, "but I don't think that matters." They drove through Boston and into Quincy. The neighborhoods changed, became less manicured, more lived in, real in a way their former street had never quite been. The house on Maple Street looked worse in daylight than Tom remembered. The paint was peeling. The porch sagged. Half the shutters hung at wrong angles. The yard was overgrown with weeds. But the roof was solid, the structure sound, and when Tom unlocked the door and stepped inside, it smelled like possibility instead of decay. The kids explored while Father Patrick helped unload. Abby found a window seat in one of the bedrooms and claimed it immediately. Sam discovered the attic and started planning how to turn it into a reading space. "This is home now," Tom told them, when everything was unloaded and Father Patrick had left with promises to check in. "This is where we start over." Abby held up her sketchbook. "I drew our old house, so we don't forget." "We won't forget," Tom promised. "But we're going to make new memories here. Good ones." That night they slept on air mattresses in the living room because the bedrooms weren't ready yet. The house made strange sounds, creaked and groaned like an old ship settling. Outside, the neighborhood was loud in unfamiliar ways. Dogs barking, cars passing, voices calling to each other in the dark. Tom lay awake listening to his children breathe and thinking about Caroline, about the test she had designed, about 18 months of proving himself worthy of wealth he didn't want and hadn't asked for. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the money was never what mattered. Maybe Caroline had known all along that what he needed to prove wasn't that he could survive poverty. It was that he could thrive in it, that he could raise their children to be good humans regardless of their circumstances. That character wasn't about what you had, but about what you did when you had very little. His phone buzzed, a text from Robert Matthews. "Day one begins now. I believe in you. She believed in you. Now you need to believe in yourself." Tom looked at the message for a long time. Then he turned off his phone and closed his eyes. 18 months, 547 days, 13,128 hours. The proving ground had begun. The house on 47 Maple Street stood like a question mark against the gray November sky. Tom Bennett sat in his idling truck, watching rain streak down the windshield, obscuring the peeling paint and sagging gutters of what was now supposed to be home. In the back seat, Abby had her face pressed against the window, her breath fogging the glass. Sam sat rigid beside, arms crossed, jaw set in that way that reminded Tom so much of himself at that age. Stubborn, protective, trying so hard not to be afraid. The windshield wipers made their rhythmic complaint, back and forth, like the argument still raging in Tom's head. He could have accepted Victoria's offer. Guest house on the estate, private entrance. The children would have their own rooms, maybe even the same furniture from before. But the cost of that comfort sat heavy in his chest, heavier than any mortgage payment. They would own him then. Every decision questioned, every choice scrutinized, every moment a reminder that he had failed to provide what the Westfield name could buy. Margaret Chen's ancient Buick pulled up behind them, headlights cutting through the rain. She emerged with an umbrella that had seen better decades, picking her way across puddles with the careful steps of someone who had learned not to rush through life's difficult moments. Tom watched her approach in the side mirror. 70 years old, barely 5 feet tall, but she moved with the quiet authority of someone who had survived things that would have broken softer people. She rapped on his window with knuckles gnarled by 60 years of alterations work. Tom rolled it down halfway, rain misting his face. "You planning to sit here until the truck rusts out?" she asked. "Or are we going to see what we're working with?" The house revealed itself slowly, reluctantly, like someone ashamed to be seen. The front steps weren't just worn. They were actively dangerous. The second one cracked clean through, the third one missing entirely. The porch sagged in the middle like a sway-backed horse. Half the shutters hung at angles that suggested surrender rather than decoration. The yard was a tangle of weeds and wild growth that had long since won the war against any lawn that might have existed. But the roof looked solid. The bones of the place seemed straight. And when Margaret produced the key and opened the front door, Tom saw what she had meant when she said the structure had potential. The living room was larger than he had expected, with hardwood floors hidden beneath decades of grime. A brick fireplace dominated one wall, its mantel scarred but intact. The windows were original, the old kind with weights and pulleys, the glass wavy with age but unbroken. Abby moved through the rooms like a ghost, her footsteps echoing on the bare floors. She stopped in what might have been a dining room, staring at a patch of wallpaper that had curled away from the wall, revealing layers of different patterns beneath. 7 different wallpapers, 7 different families who had lived here, 7 different versions of what home meant. Sam went straight to what appeared to be a bedroom, testing the floorboards with careful steps, his analytical mind already cataloging problems and solutions. Tom heard him moving upstairs, heard the creak and groan of old wood accepting new weight. Margaret stood beside Tom in the doorway between the living room and kitchen. The kitchen cabinets were painted a green that might have been fashionable in 1972. The countertop was that speckled laminate that never really looked clean even when it was. The linoleum was cracked and curling at the edges, but the sink was deep and the window above it faced east, which meant morning light. "It needs work," Margaret said. It was not a question. Tom thought about his savings account, $3,214. He thought about his salary, $48,000 a year before taxes. He thought about the cost of everything that needed doing here and felt something cold settle in his stomach. "I can't afford to fix all this," he said quietly. Margaret made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been something sadder. "Young man, you think I'm showing you this place because you can afford it. I'm showing it to you because you need it, and because it needs you." She walked into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator, which hummed to life despite looking like it predated the moon landing. "Works fine," she said, "loud as a freight train, but it keeps things cold. That's all a refrigerator needs to do. The owner is my nephew's friend, moved to Arizona for his lungs. Couldn't sell it in this market. Would rather have someone here taking care of it than let it fall apart empty. You fix it up, you live here. Rent to own, $400 a month." Tom did the math. That was doable. Barely. But it left almost nothing for the repairs. Almost nothing for the furniture they would need. Almost nothing for the 1,000 small emergencies that would inevitably arise. As if reading his mind, Margaret opened a drawer and pulled out a toolbox. Old metal. The kind they made before everything was plastic. Half the tools inside were older than Tom. "My husband's," she said. "He's been gone 15 years. Tools should be used, not collecting dust in my garage." She set it on the counter with a solid thunk. "You know how to use these." It wasn't a question. "My father was a carpenter," Tom said. "Then you know that a house is just wood and nails. Everything that's broken can be fixed. You just need time and the will to do it." She moved to the back door and opened it. The yard beyond was even worse than the front, but there was space. Room for children to run. Room for a garden, maybe? Room to breathe. "My son died in Iraq," Margaret said without turning around. "Marines, 3rd deployment. He was 24. The words hung in the air like the rain outside, inevitable and cold. "I know what it's like," she continued, "to lose someone and have to keep going. To have people tell you what you should do, how you should feel, what would be best. Everyone has an opinion about your grief. Everyone knows better than you what you need." She turned then, and Tom saw something in her face that he recognized. The scar tissue of survival. The quiet strength of someone who had learned that you don't get over loss. You just learn to carry it differently. "So I'm not going to tell you what to do, Tom Bennett, but I will tell you this. Your children don't need a mansion. They need a father who shows them that hard times don't break you. They need to see a man who keeps his promises and does his work and doesn't quit when things get difficult. You give them that, and you've given them more than the Westfields can buy. Abby's footsteps sounded from upstairs. She appeared at the top of the stairs, her sketchbook clutched to her chest. "There's a window seat in one of the bedrooms," she said. "Mom always wanted a window seat." Sam emerged from another room. "The closet in the back bedroom is big enough for a desk. I could set up my computer stuff there." They were trying. That's what killed Tom. They were 10 years old and trying to make this work because they trusted him to know what he was doing. They were looking at peeling wallpaper and broken steps and seeing possibility because that's what children do. They believe in their parents until the world teaches them not to. Tom made the decision the way his father had taught him to make all important decisions. Not with his head, which could talk itself into anything, but with his hands, which knew the feel of honest work. "We'll take it," he said. The first night in the house on Maple Street, they slept on air mattresses in the living room because the bedrooms upstairs still smelled like mildew and defeat. Tom lay awake listening to the house settle around them, every creak and groan a reminder of how much work lay ahead. Abby had fallen asleep clutching her mother's wedding ring, which she had threaded onto a chain around her neck. Sam slept with his back to the wall, positioned so he could see both doors, his protective instincts even stronger in this unfamiliar place. Tom's phone buzzed with a text from Sophia Martinez, his colleague from school. They had been teaching on the same hallway for 3 years, friendly in that casual way of people who share a break room and occasionally commiserate about difficult students or ridiculous administrative policies. "Heard about the move. How are the kids holding up?" Her directness was one of the things he appreciated about Sophia. No fake sympathy, no awkward dancing around the subject, just the question that mattered. He typed back, "They're resilient, trying to be brave." The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Kids shouldn't have to be brave. They should just get to be kids. Tom stared at those words for a long time before responding. "Working on it." The next morning arrived with all the subtle grace of a freight train. Tom woke at 5:30 to the sound of a pipe banging somewhere in the walls. The bathroom, when he found it, had a toilet that ran constantly and a shower with water pressure that alternated between dribble and fire hose with no middle ground. The mirror was cracked diagonally, splitting his reflection into 2 separate people who didn't quite line up. He made coffee in the ancient percolator Margaret had left, the smell gradually filling the kitchen and making the place feel slightly less hostile. While the kids still slept, he walked through the house with a notepad, cataloging everything that needed immediate attention versus everything that could wait. The list grew longer with each room. The upstairs bathroom needed a new toilet. The back bedroom window was painted shut. The basement stairs were a death trap. The heating system made sounds that suggested it was held together by hope and prayer. He added it all to the list and tried not to think about how many weekends and late nights each item represented. By the time Abby and Sam woke, he had a plan, or at least the skeleton of one. Over cereal eaten from bowls Margaret had donated and milk from the refrigerator that sounded like it was digesting rocks. Tom laid it out. They would divide the house into zones. First priority was making the bedrooms livable. Second was the bathroom. Third was the kitchen. Everything else could wait. "I can help," Sam said immediately. "Me too," Abby added. Tom looked at his 10-year-old children so eager to contribute and felt something crack in his chest. They should be playing video games or arguing about what to watch on TV. They should be children, safe and cared for, not junior carpenters learning to spackle and paint out of necessity. But he also knew Margaret was right. They needed to see him work. They needed to know that problems had solutions, that broken things could be fixed, that hard didn't mean impossible. "Okay," he said, "but homework comes first, always." The school transfer happened on a Monday morning that felt like walking into cold water. Quincy Middle School was nothing like the private academy the twins had attended before. The building was older, the hallways more crowded, the fluorescent lighting harsh and unflattering. Tom walked them to the main office, signed the paperwork, and watched an administrative assistant with kind eyes and tired face explain their schedules. Sam would have Mr. Peterson for math. Abby would have Mrs. Reynolds for art. They would both have the same lunch period, which the assistant marked on their schedules like it was a small victory. Maybe it was. Tom knelt to their level in the hallway, ignoring the stream of students flowing around them. Sam's jaw was tight. Abby's hands were shaking slightly. "You've got this," he said. "And if it's hard, that's okay. Hard doesn't mean impossible. What if they ask about Mom, Abby whispered. Then you tell them the truth, that she died and you miss her. Anyone who doesn't understand that isn't worth worrying about. He watched them walk down separate hallways, both of them with backpacks that seemed too big for their small frames, both of them trying so hard to be brave. Then he drove to his own school in Boston, sitting in traffic for 40 minutes that had previously been a 15-minute commute, and tried to prepare himself for the day ahead. His students noticed immediately that something was different. Kids always did. They might not be able to tell you the capital of Montana or explain the causes of the Civil War, but they could read an adult's stress level like a book written in their native language. "Mr. Bennett, are you okay?" Sarah Rodriguez asked during second period. "Just tired, Sarah. Long weekend." But his hands shook slightly when he wrote on the board, and he had to read the same paragraph in the textbook twice because the words kept sliding away from his attention. By lunch, word had spread through the teacher's lounge that Tom Bennett's in-laws had kicked him out of the house and he was living in some rundown place in Quincy and working 3 jobs to make ends meet. The story had grown in the telling, as stories do. By the time it reached him, he was supposedly living in his car, and the children were in foster care, and the Westfields were suing for custody. Tom listened to Sophia Martinez shut down the rumors with a ferocity that surprised him. "That's enough," she said to a cluster of teachers trading speculation like currency. "If Tom wants to share his business, he will. Otherwise, we respect his privacy and we support our colleague. Are we clear?" They were clear. Later, as Tom gathered his things at the end of the day, Sophia appeared in his doorway. She leaned against the frame with the casual posture of someone who had learned to make herself small in spaces that didn't always welcome strong women. "You don't have to do this alone," she said. Tom looked up from his bag. "Do what?" "All of it. The house, the kids, the pretending you're fine when you're clearly running on fumes." He could have deflected, could have made a joke or changed the subject or thanked her politely and moved on. But there was something in her face that stopped him. A recognition, like she had stood where he was standing and knew exactly how the ground felt under those particular feet. "I don't know how to do it any other way," he admitted. Sophia pushed off from the door frame and walked into the room. She pulled out the student desk next to his and sat in it, her knees awkwardly high, looking ridiculous and somehow perfectly comfortable at the same time. "When I got divorced 3 years ago," she said, "I thought I had to prove to everyone that I was fine, that I could handle it all. Single mom with a daughter and a full-time job, and a house falling apart, and an ex who forgot to pay child support more often than he remembered. I thought asking for help meant I had failed." She picked at a piece of tape on the desk, peeling it away slowly. "You know what I learned? I learned that there's a difference between charity and community. Charity is when someone feels sorry for you and gives you something out of pity. Community is when people care about you and help because that's what people do for each other." Tom sat down in his desk chair, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. "The Westfields offered charity," he said, "with strings attached." "Right, but that's not your only option. You have colleagues here who would help you move furniture or watch your kids while you work on the house. You have neighbors in Quincy who probably know more about home repair than you think. You have resources you haven't even considered because you're so focused on doing it alone." She stood up, smoothing her skirt with hands that bore old scars from some craft or hobby Tom had never asked about. "The PTA has a discretionary fund for student needs. Art supplies, field trip fees, things like that. If Abby needs materials for class, we can help. That's for families who can't afford it," Tom said automatically. Sophia gave him a look that could have stripped paint. "And right now, that's you. There's no shame in that, Tom. The shame is in letting pride hurt your kids." She left him sitting there, staring at the empty classroom, wrestling with the truth she had delivered like a surgeon's knife. Clean, precise, necessary. That night, Tom worked on the front steps until his hands bled. He had bought lumber at the hardware store, using money earmarked for groceries and telling himself they could make do with rice and beans for a week. The wood needed to be cut to size, fitted into place, secured with nails that had to be driven at precise angles to hold. Margaret appeared sometime around 8. Watching from the sidewalk. "You're going to hurt yourself working in the dark," she observed. "Got a light on the porch?" "Barely. And your hands are shaking." "Just tired." She climbed the steps carefully, testing each one before trusting it with her weight. When she reached the top, she sat down on the porch beside his work area and opened a thermos he hadn't noticed her carrying. "Coffee," she said. "The good kind, not whatever dishwater you're making in that percolator." The coffee was indeed good. Strong and hot and exactly what he needed. You know what your problem is? Margaret said after a while. Just one problem. I'm doing better than I thought. Her laugh was dry as autumn leaves. Your problem is you think this is a test you can pass by working hard enough. You think if you just do everything right, sacrifice enough, bleed enough, the universe will reward you. That's not how life works. Tom hammered another nail, the sound sharp in the quiet street. Then how does it work? Life just happens. Good people suffer. Bad people prosper. The only thing you can control is what kind of person you choose to be while it's happening. She poured more coffee into the thermos cap and handed it to him. My son was a good man, best man I ever knew. And he died in a desert 7,000 miles from home because someone in Washington decided it needed to happen. There was no fairness in that, no cosmic balance, just a mother losing her child and having to figure out how to keep breathing. I'm sorry, Tom said. Margaret waved this away. I'm not telling you for sympathy. I'm telling you so you understand. You can't earn safety. You can't work hard enough to guarantee your children won't hurt. All you can do is love them and show them how to be human in a world that sometimes feels designed to strip that humanity away. She stood, joints creaking audibly. Tomorrow I'm bringing my nephew's boy, 16, strong as an ox, bored out of his mind all summer. He can help you with the heavy work. And before you start with the I can't afford it, he's volunteering. Community service hours for school, you'd be doing him a favor. Tom opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. The step he was working on still needed 3 more boards. His back was screaming, and pride, as Sophia had pointed out, was a luxury he could not afford. Thank you, he said. The second week in the house, the toilet upstairs died with a gurgling sound that suggested its suffering was finally over. Tom stood in the bathroom, staring at the water spreading across the floor, and felt the absurd urge to laugh, or cry, or possibly both. Sam appeared in the doorway, already holding towels. We'll need a bucket too, and maybe that wet dry vac Mr. Chen said we could borrow. Together, they mopped up the flood. Together, they watched YouTube videos on toilet installation. Together, they drove to Home Depot, where Tom used money he had set aside for school clothes to buy the cheapest toilet that looked like it might last more than a month. Installing it took 4 hours. The instructions were written in a technical English that bore only passing resemblance to any language Tom actually spoke. The parts didn't quite fit the way the diagram suggested. The wax ring was a nightmare of sticky disaster. But eventually, miraculously, the toilet was installed and functional. Sam flushed it experimentally. Then again, then a third time, watching the water swirl and drain with the satisfaction of someone who had conquered a particularly difficult math problem. We did it, he said. The simple pride in those 3 words made every frustrating minute worth it. Abby's adjustment to the new school was harder. She came home the first Friday with red eyes and a carefully blank expression that told Tom everything he needed to know. He found her in what was becoming her room, sitting on the floor with her sketchbook, drawing furiously. The drawing was of their old house, the one with the perfect lawn and the perfect shutters and the perfect law of stability. But she had drawn it falling apart, the walls cracking, the roof caving in, the whole structure collapsing under its own weight. Someone said my clothes looked like they came from a thrift store, she said without looking up. Because they did. Margaret took me shopping at the consignment place. Tom sat down beside her on the floor. Did you tell them that's where they came from? Abby's pencil stilled. No, I pretended I didn't hear them. Sometimes that's the smart play. But Abby, there's no shame in thrift store clothes. Some of the best things I ever owned came from secondhand shops. The kids at my old school would never shop at thrift stores. No, Tom agreed. They wouldn't, because they have never had to think about where their next meal comes from or whether they can afford new shoes when they outgrow the old ones. They've never had to choose between being warm and being fashionable. That doesn't make them bad people, but it does mean they don't understand something important. What? That the price tag on your clothes doesn't tell anyone who you are. Your character does. Your kindness does. The way you treat people who can't do anything for you. That's what matters. Abby was quiet for a long time, her pencil moving again, adding details to the collapsing house. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. I miss Mom. I know, sweetheart, so do I. Does it ever stop hurting? Tom thought about lying, about offering easy comfort that wouldn't be true. But Abby deserved better than that. No, he said, it changes. It gets different. But people we love don't stop mattering just because they're gone. The hurt is just the proof that the love was real. She leaned against him then, her head on his shoulder, still drawing. Tom watched her pencil move across the page, adding something new to the image. Flowers, growing up through the cracks in the broken house, small and delicate, but unmistakably alive. By the end of the first month, Tom had a rhythm. Up at 5:30, coffee while reviewing lesson plans. Wake the kids at 6:15. Breakfast together, usually oatmeal or toast because both were cheap and filling. Drive them to school in Quincy, then fight traffic to Boston for his own teaching job. Work until 3, grade papers in his classroom until 4. Drive to his tutoring clients in the wealthy suburbs, helping high school students understand history while sitting in kitchens that cost more than his annual salary. Home by 8. Dinner with the kids, usually something simple. Help with homework. House repairs until midnight or later. Sleep, repeat. The weekends were for the bigger projects. With Margaret's nephew's son, a quiet kid named David who was surprisingly skilled with power tools, Tom tackled the basement stairs. They reinforced the foundation in one corner where water had been getting in. They fixed the back door so it actually latched. They patched holes in the walls and sanded floors and painted until everything smelled like paint fumes and possibility. Sam became the unofficial project manager, keeping a spreadsheet of tasks completed and tasks remaining, organized by priority and estimated cost. He had somehow taught himself basic home repair terminology from YouTube videos and could discuss load-bearing walls and plumbing vents with a seriousness that would have been funny if it wasn't so impressive. Abby documented everything in her sketchbook. The house in various states of repair, David perched on a ladder, Margaret bringing sandwiches, Tom covered in sawdust. She was creating a visual record of their transformation, though Tom suspected she didn't consciously realize that's what she was doing. Money was the constant pressure, the number in his checking account that never seemed to grow no matter how many hours he worked. Tom became an expert at stretching every dollar. He learned which grocery stores had the best sales on which days. He learned to cook in bulk and freeze portions. He learned to buy nothing that wasn't absolutely necessary and to define necessary as narrowly as possible. The kids' shoes were held together with a super glue. Their winter coats came from the church donation bin. Their school supplies were the cheapest versions available, and they never complained. Not once. They understood, in that way children understand things without needing them spelled out, that their father was doing everything humanly possible. But Tom saw the way Sam's coat sleeves ended 2 inches above his wrists. He saw the way Abby's shoes were starting to split at the seams. He saw what he couldn't provide, and it sat in his chest like a physical weight. November brought the first real cold. The heating system in the house worked, technically, but it was loud and inefficient and drove the electric bill up to heights that made Tom's stomach drop. He kept the thermostat at 62 and told the kids to wear layers. They slept under every blanket they owned. Margaret contributed quilts that smelled like mothballs and memories. One particularly bitter night, Tom woke to find Sam standing by the window, breath fogging in the cold air of the bedroom. "Can't sleep," Sam said. "Too cold." Tom got up and put his own coat over Sam's shoulders. Then he sat beside his son on the window seat that had come with the house, looking out at the street below, where ice was forming in the puddles. "I'm sorry," Tom said. "I'm sorry I can't give you what you had before." Sam was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that Tom would remember for the rest of his life. "I don't want what we had before. Those people threw us out when we needed them. These people," he gestured vaguely at the neighborhood, "help us because they want to. That matters more than being warm." The second month brought its own challenges. Tom's car started making a sound that mechanics describe as expensive. He ignored it as long as possible, then longer than that, until finally the check engine light came on and stayed on, and the car began to shudder when he pressed the gas pedal. The diagnosis was $1,200 worth of necessary repairs. Tom had $347 in his account. He sat in the parking lot of the mechanic's shop, staring at the estimate, doing math that no matter how many times he worked, it didn't add up to a solution. He needed the car. Without it, he couldn't get to work, couldn't get the kids to school, couldn't do the tutoring that brought in the extra money they desperately needed. His phone rang. Father Patrick O'Brien from St. Michael's. "Tom, I heard about your car situation. The parish has a community assistance fund. We can help." Tom's first instinct was to refuse. to say thank you, but he would figure it out, to maintain the fiction that he was managing fine. But then he remembered Sophia's words, the difference between charity and community. And he remembered Sam's words about people who help because they want to. Thank you, he said. I'll pay it back when I can. There's no paying back, Father Patrick said gently. There's only paying forward. When you're in a position to help someone else, you do it. That's how this works. The car was fixed. Tom drove it home with a sense of humiliation and gratitude so tangled together he couldn't separate them. That night, he added Father Patrick's name to a mental list he was keeping. People to help when he could. Debts that weren't debts, but promises. Thanksgiving arrived with no particular ceremony. The Westfields sent an invitation to join them at the estate, delivered via a formal card that Victoria had probably ordered from a stationer. Tom sent a polite decline. They would have their own Thanksgiving, he decided, small and simple, in theirs. Margaret invited them to her house instead. She lived in a tidy apartment above her alteration shop, the walls covered with photos of her son at various ages. Marine dress uniform, high school graduation, little boy on a bicycle. She cooked a turkey that barely fit in her oven and made stuffing from a recipe she said her grandmother had brought from China and adapted over the years. There were only 5 of them around the table: Margaret, Tom, Abby, Sam, and Father Patrick, who had nowhere else to be and didn't seem to mind. It was nothing like the Westfield Thanksgivings Tom remembered. No fine china or crystal, no staff serving courses, no careful conversations about business and society and all the other things wealthy people discuss when they're performing wealth for each other. Instead, they ate turkey and stuffing and talked about real things. Margaret told stories about her son. Father Patrick talked about the shelter downtown and the families they were helping. Sam explained his math competition preparation with the enthusiasm of someone who had finally found people who didn't think his interests were weird. Abby showed Margaret some of her recent sketches. When it came time for the traditional going around the table saying what you're thankful for, Tom almost couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. I'm thankful for people who help without being asked, he finally managed. For kindness that doesn't come with conditions. For my kids who are stronger than they should have to be. Sam and Abby exchanged a look. Then Sam spoke up. We're thankful for Dad, who never quits even when things are really hard. The words hung in the warm air of Margaret's small apartment, and Tom had to look away because his eyes were burning and he didn't trust his voice. The week after Thanksgiving, Tom received a letter on official Westfield Properties letterhead. He opened it standing in the kitchen, the morning light cold through the window, and felt the bottom drop out of his carefully maintained composure. It was a notice of intent to file for emergency custody. Victoria and Richard Westfield, as grandparents concerned for the welfare of their minor grandchildren, were petitioning the court for temporary guardianship. The grounds were listed in clinical legal language that didn't quite hide the accusation underneath. Inadequate housing, financial instability, inability to provide appropriate educational and medical care. There was a court date, 3 weeks away. Tom read the letter 3 times, each time hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less devastating. They didn't. He thought about his house with its secondhand furniture and temperamental heating. He thought about the thrift store clothes and the carefully stretched grocery budget. He thought about how it would look to a judge, a teacher making $48,000 a year trying to raise twins in a house that was still more renovation project than home. And he thought about Victoria and Richard with their estate and their resources and their lawyers who cost more per hour than Tom made in a week. The rational part of his brain told him he should be terrified. The Westfields had money and influence and connections. They could paint him as an unfit parent. They could take his children, and there wouldn't be anything he could do to stop them. But there was another part of him, quieter but stronger, that felt something else entirely. Not fear, anger. He had done everything right. He had worked himself to exhaustion. He had accepted help when offered. He had kept his children fed and clothed and loved. He had shown them how to face hard times with dignity and grace. He had taught them that character mattered more than comfort. And now Victoria Westfield, who had thrown them out without a second thought, who had offered help only when it came with strings attached, who had never once asked what the children actually needed, was going to tell a court that he was inadequate. Tom folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer. Then he called a number he had been avoiding for weeks. Robert Matthews, the lawyer who had delivered the news about Carrie's trust. Robert, this is Tom Bennett. We need to talk. The meeting happened 2 days later in Robert's office downtown. The building was old Boston money, all dark wood and leather furniture, and the smell of old books and older secrets. Robert Matthews sat behind a desk that had probably cost more than Tom's car and listened to Tom explain the situation. When Tom finished, Robert leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "They're trying to force your hand," he said. "Make you so desperate for stability that you'll accept their terms. Move into the guest house. Let them dictate how you raise the children. Essentially give them control in exchange for them dropping the custody petition." Tom had figured that much out himself. What he needed was Robert's professional opinion on whether he had any chance of fighting it. The lawyer was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out a file Tom recognized, the one with Carrie's trust information. "I can't discuss the specific terms of your wife's estate yet," Robert said carefully. "But I can tell you that Caroline was very concerned about exactly this scenario. She knew her mother. She knew how Victoria operated, and she made certain arrangements." "What kind of arrangements?" "The kind I'm legally obligated not to reveal until specific conditions are met. But Tom, I can tell you this much. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep being the father you've been. Keep accepting help from your community. Keep showing those children that integrity matters more than comfort." "That's not exactly legal advice," Tom pointed out. "No, but it's the advice your wife would give you if she were here." Tom left the meeting more confused than when he arrived. But there was something in Robert's careful words that felt like hope. Or if not hope, then at least the promise that this fight wasn't as one-sided as it appeared. December arrived with early darkness and the kind of cold that made the house's inadequate heating even more obvious. Tom added weather stripping to the windows, stuffed towels under the doors, and told himself the thermostat was perfectly fine at 60 degrees. The kids were doing better in school than he had dared to hope. Sam's math teacher, a man named Peterson who coached the math team, had called to say Sam was the strongest student he had seen in years. Abby's art teacher wanted to enter one of her pieces in a regional student art show. These were victories, small but real. But Tom couldn't shake the feeling of a clock ticking down. 3 weeks until the court date. 3 weeks to somehow prove he was enough. 3 weeks to fight people with unlimited resources and connections that went back generations. He worked on the house with renewed intensity, fixed the leak in the upstairs bathroom, painted Abby's bedroom the soft blue she had asked for, built shelves in Sam's room for his books and the growing collection of science equipment he was acquiring from somewhere. Every improvement felt like armor, like evidence that he was providing a real home. The notice from school arrived on a Friday. Sam had been selected for the state math competition. It was a huge honor. It was also $300 in fees and travel costs. Money Tom didn't have. He stared at the permission slip, at the line where he was supposed to sign, indicating he could afford to send his son to compete. He thought about calling the school, explaining the situation, asking if there was financial assistance available. Then Sam came into the kitchen, saw the paper in Tom's hands, and his face lit up. "I made the team," he said. "Mr. Peterson said I scored highest in the district." Tom looked at his son's joy and made a decision he would probably regret. He would pick up another tutoring client, work Sundays if he had to. He would find the money somehow. "That's incredible, buddy. I'm so proud of you." Later that night, after the kids were asleep, Tom sat at the kitchen table doing math that made his head hurt. Even with extra tutoring clients, he couldn't make the numbers work. Not with the court case looming, not with Christmas coming, not with all the thousand small costs of keeping 2 children alive and healthy. His phone buzzes, a text from Sophia Martinez. "Saw Sam made the math team, that's wonderful." He typed back, "Yeah, really proud of him." The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "The math team boosters have fundraising. They help with travel costs. I can give you the contact info if you want." Tom stared at the message. Another offer of help, another admission that he couldn't do it alone. He thought about pride, about the difference between charity and community, about what his children needed to see from him. "That would be great," he typed. "Thank you." The response came immediately. "Already emailed you." And Tom, there's no shame in letting people help. That's what community means. He sat there for a long time, staring at that message, trying to believe it was true. The weekend before the court date, Richard Westfield showed up at the house on Maple Street. He came alone, driving himself instead of being chauffeured, which was unusual enough that Tom noticed immediately. He looked older than Tom remembered. Tired, like he was carrying something heavy and had been for too long. "Can we talk?" Richard asked. They sat on the front porch that Tom had repaired weeks ago. The steps were solid now. the railing secure. It was good work, the kind Tom's father would have been proud of. Richard looked at the house, at the fresh paint, and the new shutters Tom had installed last weekend. You've done a lot with the place. It needed work. Caroline would have liked this, Richard said quietly. She always preferred things that were built with care over things that were just expensive. Tom waited. Richard hadn't come here to discuss home improvement. Victoria's making a mistake, Richard finally said. This custody petition, it's not about the children. It's about control, about not accepting that Caroline made her own choices, and those choices didn't include living the life Victoria wanted for her. Then stop her, Tom said. Richard's laugh was bitter. You think I have that power? You think after 42 years of marriage, I've learned how to change Victoria's mind once it's made up? You could try. You could stand up in court and tell the truth. That the kids are happy, that I'm doing my best, that this is what Carrie wanted. Richard was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was so low, Tom had to lean in to hear it. There's something you should know about that trust, about the conditions Carrie set up. Robert said he couldn't discuss it yet. Robert works for the estate, I don't. And I think you have a right to understand what my daughter was trying to do. He pulled out a folded paper from his jacket pocket, handed it to Tom. It was a copy of something from Carrie's will. The section about the trust conditions. Tom read it twice, the words not quite making sense the first time through. She set it up so I had to prove I could provide for the kids without Westfield help, he said slowly. For 18 months, and if I accept any financial assistance from you or Victoria during that time, the money goes to charity instead. Richard nodded. She wanted to prove to Victoria that you were enough, that the children would thrive with you, not because of money, but because of character. She knew her mother would try to buy her way into control, so she made it impossible. Tom looked at the man who had stood silent while his wife threw Tom and the children out, who had let this happen without intervening. Why are you telling me this now? Because watching Victoria prepare for this custody hearing, I realized something. Caroline didn't just want to prove you were enough to Victoria. She wanted to prove it to me, to the world. But most importantly, she wanted to prove it to you. Richard stood, joints creaking. I'm not going to testify against you, Tom. I'm going to testify for you. I'm going to tell that judge that my grandchildren are thriving, that you've given them exactly what they need, that Caroline made the right choice when she chose you. He walked down the steps Tom had built, then turned back. And Tom, you've already won. You just don't know it yet. The court date arrived like a storm that had been gathering on the horizon for weeks. Tom wore his only suit, the one he had gotten married in and worn to Carrie's funeral. It was slightly too big now. He had lost weight these past months without really noticing. The stress and the skipped meals and the endless physical labor had stripped him down to something leaner and harder. The courtroom was smaller than he expected. Family court, not the grand chambers he had seen in movies. Victoria and her lawyer sat on one side, both perfectly composed in their expensive suits. Tom sat with a court-appointed advocate, a tired-looking woman named Sarah Chen, who had 20 minutes to review his case before the hearing started. The judge was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many families torn apart by circumstances and pride. Victoria's lawyer went first, painting a picture of instability and inadequacy, the house in a rough neighborhood, the financial struggles, the long hours Tom worked, the lack of proper supervision. It was all true, technically, but stripped of context, it sounded damning. Then it was Tom's turn. Sarah Chen asked him simple questions. Where did he work? How were the children doing in school? What was a typical day like? Tom answered honestly. He didn't try to make it sound better than it was. He talked about the house they were slowly renovating together, about the community that had welcomed them, about Sam's math team and Abby's art, about the small victories and the ongoing challenges. The judge listened without expression. Then Richard Westfield asked to speak. Victoria's lawyer tried to object, but the judge allowed it. Richard stood and walked to the witness area like a man who had made a decision and intended to see it through. Your Honor, I'm the children's grandfather, and I'm here to tell you that my wife is wrong. Tom Bennett is exactly the father these children need. He's teaching them resilience and integrity, and that character matters more than comfort. My daughter knew this. That's why she chose him. That's why she trusted him with our grandchildren. Victoria's face went white, then red. Her lawyer tried to interrupt, but Richard kept talking. I have failed my grandchildren by standing silent while my wife tried to control their lives. I won't fail them again. They belong with their father. And if this court rules otherwise, it will be a grave injustice. The courtroom was silent. The judge made a note. Then she asked the question Tom had been dreading. Mr. Bennett, can you provide for these children's needs? Adequate housing, nutrition, medical care, educational opportunities. Tom thought about lying, about inflating his financial situation or downplaying the struggles. But he had promised himself he would never lie to protect his pride. Your Honor, I work 3 jobs to make ends meet. The house needs more work. Money is tight. But my children are fed and clothed and loved. They're excelling in school. They're happy. They know they're safe. If that's not adequate, then I don't know what is. The judge was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke. Mr. and Mrs. Westfield, I appreciate your concern for your grandchildren, but concern doesn't give you the right to upend their lives. I see no evidence of neglect or abuse. I see a father working hard to provide stability in difficult circumstances. The petition for emergency custody is denied. Victoria stood, her composure finally cracking. Your Honor, please. That house is barely habitable. Those children deserve better. The judge's eyes were cold. What those children deserve, Mrs. Westfield, is to be with a parent who loves them more than he loves his pride. Mr. Bennett has demonstrated that, have you? Tom walked out of the courthouse in a daze. Richard caught up with him on the steps. I'm sorry, Richard said, for all of it, for not standing up sooner, for letting Victoria's need for control hurt our family. Caroline was right about you. She was always right. Tom shook his hand. Thank you for telling the truth. That night, Tom sat with his children in their small living room and explained what had happened, that their grandparents had tried to take them away, but the judge said no, that they were going to stay together in this house and keep building the life they had started. Abby climbed into his lap, even though she was getting too big for it. Sam sat close on the other side. We knew you wouldn't let them take us, Sam said with certainty. Tom hugged them both and tried not to think about how close it had been, how easily it could have gone the other way. The next day, Robert Matthews called. Tom, we need to meet. It's time. Time for what? Time for you to learn what Caroline really left you and what she wanted you to understand about why. But that meeting and everything it would reveal would have to wait. For now, in this moment, Tom Bennett sat with his children in a house they had rebuilt with their own hands and felt something he hadn't felt in months. He felt like he had won. The morning Robert Matthews called to say it was time, Tom Bennett was fixing a leaky faucet in the upstairs bathroom of the house on Maple Street. 18 months had passed since Caroline's death. 18 months of scraped knees and tight budgets and small victories that felt enormous. 18 months of proving something he was no longer sure needed proving. Your phone's ringing, Sam called from downstairs. Tom wiped his hands on a rag and checked the screen. Robert Matthews, the name that had haunted the edges of his consciousness for a year and a half. The observer, the keeper of secrets, the man who knew things Tom desperately wanted to understand and desperately feared learning. Mr. Bennett, Robert said when Tom answered, I think it's time we had another conversation. A longer one this time. The office looked the same as it had 18 months ago. Same oil paintings of ships, same leather furniture, same smell of old money and carefully maintained tradition. But Tom was different, leaner, harder. The softness that comes from financial security had been stripped away, revealing something more essential underneath. Robert Matthews stood when Tom entered, his handshake firm and his eyes assessing in a way that suggested he had been doing exactly what Caroline had asked, watching, documenting, gathering evidence. Coffee, Robert offered. Tom accepted because his hands needed something to hold, something to anchor him while the ground shifted beneath his feet. 18 months, Robert said, settling into his chair. You made it. The words should have felt like victory. Instead, they felt like the starting gun for a race Tom hadn't known he was running. I want to show you something, Robert continued. He opened a laptop and turned it so Tom could see the screen. Your wife recorded this 2 weeks before she died. She wanted you to see it now, at this moment, not before. The video quality was grainy, hospital lighting, but Caroline's face filled the frame and Tom's breath caught in his throat. 18 months of healing and the sight of her could still stop his heart. Hi, sweetheart, Caroline said, her voice weak but clear. If you're watching this, you made it through the hardest part. You survived 18 months without the Westfield money, without their help, without compromising who you are. She paused, gathering strength. I need you to understand why I did this, why I couldn't just tell you about the trust, Why I had to set up this elaborate test. Another pause, longer this time. My mother will tell you it was about proving yourself to her, about demonstrating that you're worthy of raising Westfield grandchildren. And yes, that's part of it. She needed to see what I already knew. That character matters more than money. That love and determination can provide everything children truly need. Caroline shifted slightly, wincing with pain she tried to hide. But Tom, that's not the real reason. The real reason is you. You've spent our entire marriage comparing yourself to the Westfield name, wondering if you were good enough, if you could provide enough, if the children would resent you for not giving them the life my parents could offer. Tears ran down her face on the screen. So I created a situation where you had no choice but to prove to yourself what I've always known, that you're not just enough, you're everything, you're the father every child deserves. You're the man I chose, and that choice was the best decision I ever made. She wiped her eyes. The money is yours now, yours and the children's. But it comes with conditions because I know you, Tom Bennett. I know you'll want to give it all away, to prove you don't need it, to show everyone that you're the same man who survived without it. Caroline smiled then, that smile Tom had fallen in love with 13 years ago. Don't do that. Use some of it for yourselves. Let the kids go to good colleges. Take a vacation. Buy a car that doesn't break down every other month. You've earned the right to stop struggling, but also use it to help others. Build something that matters. Create opportunities for families like ours, like we were. Like we would have been if I hadn't been lucky enough to be born into wealth I didn't earn. The video quality flickered. I have to go now. The nurses are coming. But Tom, I love you. I've always loved you. Thank you for giving me the most beautiful life. Thank you for being exactly who you are. Now go live. Really live. That's what I want for you. The screen went black. Tom sat in the silence of Robert's office and cried. Not the careful tears of someone trying to maintain composure, but the raw, wrenching sobs of a man who had been holding everything together for 18 months and could finally let go. Robert handed him tissues without comment, waited while Tom pulled himself back together, offered more coffee that Tom accepted with shaking hands. She loved you very much, Robert said quietly. I know, Tom managed. I just wish she had trusted me enough to tell me. She did trust you. That's why she designed this the way she did. She knew you would rise to the challenge. She knew you would prove yourself even when the proving nearly broke you. Robert opened another file. Now we need to discuss practical matters. The trust is structured as a foundation. The Caroline Bennett Foundation, you'll serve as executive director. The board has been selected per your wife's instructions. All people she trusted, all people who understand the mission. What mission? Helping families in crisis, single parents, people dealing with medical emergencies, anyone who needs support without judgment. Your wife was very specific about the approach. Dignity over charity, partnership over pity, real help that addresses root causes. Tom thought about the past 18 months, the people who had helped him. Margaret Chen and her tools and her wisdom. Father Patrick and the Parish Fund. Sophia Martinez and the PTAA assistants. The community that had rallied without being asked. I want to tell the kids, Tom said. They deserve to know. Of course. But Mr. Bennett, before you do, there's one more thing you should see. Robert handed him a thick folder. Documentation of the past 18 months. Photos of the house renovation. Report cards showing Sam and Abby's academic progress. Letters from teachers praising their character and resilience. Testimony from neighbors about the family's integration into the community. Your wife asked me to compile evidence, Robert explained. Evidence that could be presented if anyone challenged your fitness as a parent. Evidence that you not only survived without Westfield money but thrived. Tom flipped through the pages, seeing his life documented like a legal case. The toilet installation he and Sam had struggled through. The art show where Abby's work had been displayed. The math competition Sam had won. The Thanksgiving dinner at Margaret's. The custody hearing where Richard had testified on his behalf. It's all here, he said, wonderingly. Everything. And Mr. Bennett, I want you to know, in 30 years of practicing law, I've never seen anything like what you've accomplished. Your wife was right about you. You are extraordinary. The drive home felt surreal. Tom kept replaying Caroline's video in his mind. Her voice, her face, her absolute certainty that he would succeed. He had spent 18 months angry at her for the test, for the secrets, for making him prove something that shouldn't have needed proving. But now he understood. She hadn't been testing him for her benefit. She had been giving him a gift, the gift of knowing beyond doubt that he was enough, that his worth wasn't dependent on money or status or anyone's approval, that he had everything he needed inside himself. The house on Maple Street looked different somehow, still modest, still showing signs of the renovation work that never quite ended. But it was theirs, truly theirs, built through effort and love and stubborn determination. Sam and Abby were in the kitchen when he arrived, 12 years old now, taller, more mature, shaped by the hardships they had endured together. "We need to talk," Tom said. They sat at the table they had refinished together, the one that bore scars from Sam's science experiments and paint stains from Abby's art projects. The table that had become the center of their rebuilt life. "You know the lawyer who's been checking on us," Tom began. "Mr. Matthews, he called today." "Are we in trouble?" Abby asked, her artist's intuition already sensing the emotional weight of the conversation. "No, sweetheart. The opposite. Do you remember when Mom died? How Grandma and Grandpa wanted us to move to their house?" Sam nodded. "And you said no." "I said no because you wanted us to stay together, as a family. But there was more to it than that. Things I didn't tell you because I didn't fully understand them myself." He took a breath. "Mom left us money, a lot of money, but she set up rules. I had to take care of you for 18 months without any help from the Westfields. If I could do that, the money would become ours. If I couldn't, it would go to charity." Abby's eyes widened. Like a test, Tom confirmed. "And today, Mr. Matthews told me we passed." "How much money?" Sam asked, his analytical mind already working through the implications. "About $285 million. The silence that followed was profound. Abby stared at her father like he had spoken in a foreign language. Sam's mouth opened and closed without sound. "We're rich," Abby finally whispered. "The money is in a trust," Tom explained. "We can't just spend it on whatever we want. Mom set it up to help other families. Families like us. People who need support." "But we could move," Sam said slowly. "We could go back to a nice house. We could have new things." Tom looked around this kitchen. At the cabinets they had painted together, at the window where morning light streamed in, at the scratched linoleum they had learned to ignore. "Do you want to move?" he asked. The twins exchanged glances, a silent conversation that happened in the space between heartbeats. "I like it here," Abby said carefully. "I like that we fixed everything ourselves. I like our neighbors. I like that people don't care what kind of car we drive or what brand of clothes we wear." Sam nodded. "At my old school, everyone was always trying to prove they were better than everyone else. Here, people just try to be good at what they do. That seems more important." Tom felt tears threatening again. His children had learned in 18 months what some people never learned in a lifetime. "We're staying then," he said, "but we'll use the money to help other people. People who need what we needed. Is that okay with you?" "Can we still help decide?" Sam asked. "Like, can we be part of choosing who gets help?" That's exactly what Mom wanted. She wanted this to be a family thing, all of us working together. Abby pulled her sketchbook toward her, already envisioning something. "Can I design stuff for it, like art for the offices or materials for the families?" "Absolutely." That night, Tom lay in bed and reread Caroline's letter, the one she had left 18 months ago, warning him about what was coming. He understood it differently now. She hadn't been apologizing for the test. She had been apologizing for not being there to see him pass it. His phone buzzed, a text from Sophia Martinez. "Heard you met with the lawyer today. Everything okay?" Tom smiled. News traveled fast in their small community. Sophia had become more than a colleague over the past months. More than a friend. Something neither of them had quite named yet, but both acknowledged in the careful way they navigated their growing connection. "Everything's good," he typed back. "Really good. Can we talk tomorrow?" The three dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "I'll bring coffee, the good kind." Tom set the phone aside and closed his eyes. Tomorrow he would start learning how to be rich, how to manage a foundation, how to help other families without making them feel like charity cases, how to honor Caroline's vision while building something new. But tonight, he just needed to sit with the weight of what she had done. The elaborate plan, the careful conditions, the absolute faith that he would succeed. She had loved him enough to make him prove himself. And in doing so, she had given him the greatest gift possible, the certainty that he was exactly who he needed to be. The foundation office was in a converted community center in a neighborhood that straddled working class and struggling. Tom stood outside the building with Sam and Abby, studying the brick facade that had seen better decades but still stood solid. "Mom chose this place," he told them. "She researched locations for 2 years before she died. She wanted it somewhere that needed help, somewhere people wouldn't feel out of place coming for support. It's perfect, Abby said, already sketching the entrance in her mind. Inside, the space was larger than Tom had expected. Empty now, waiting to be filled with purpose. Robert had explained that Caroline had purchased the building outright, had created detailed plans for its renovation, had even selected contractors who understood working with tight budgets and community needs. The first floor would house offices for caseworkers, a food pantry, computer stations for job searches, meeting rooms where families could discuss their situations without feeling judged. The second floor would offer art therapy for children, educational programs, support groups for single parents and grieving families. Tom walked through the empty rooms and felt Caroline's presence in every corner. She had thought of everything, had anticipated needs he wouldn't have known to consider, had created a blueprint for helping people with dignity. "When do we start?" Sam asked, his 12-year-old practicality cutting through Tom's emotional haze. "Soon," Tom said. "We need to hire people first. Good people. People who understand what it's like to struggle." The hiring process took 3 weeks. Tom interviewed dozens of candidates, social workers with impressive credentials who talked about case management and outcome metrics, but seemed disconnected from the reality of poverty. Well-meaning volunteers who wanted to help but couldn't quite hide their pity. Nonprofit professionals who saw the foundation as a career opportunity rather than a calling. Then Keisha Johnson walked into the interview. She was 42, mother of 3, had worked in social services for a decade before budget cuts eliminated her position. She sat across from Tom in the unfinished office and spoke with the kind of honesty that comes from lived experience. "I've been where your families will be," she said. "I've had to choose between rent and groceries. I've taken my kids to emergency rooms because I couldn't afford regular doctors. I've stood in line at food banks and felt people's eyes judging me." She met his gaze directly. "I know what it feels like to need help, and I know the difference between someone who wants to help and someone who wants to feel superior while helping. If you're building the second kind of place, I'm not interested." Tom hired her immediately. The second hire was Marcus Thompson, 28, had grown up in public housing, worked his way through community college while raising his younger siblings after their mother died, specialized in financial counseling, understood how poverty created traps that kept people struggling even when they worked multiple jobs. The third was Anna Kowalski, art therapist, had used creative expression to help her own children process domestic violence trauma. She looked at Abby's sketches of the children's therapy space and understood immediately what Caroline had envisioned. "These aren't just pretty pictures," Anna said. "These are healing spaces, places where kids can express what they can't say out loud." The team came together like pieces of a puzzle Tom hadn't known existed. Each person brought skills and experiences that complemented the others. Each person understood from personal history that effective help required respect and partnership rather than pity and control. Victoria called the day the foundation website went live. Tom almost didn't answer, but 18 months of growth had taught him that avoidance solved nothing. "Thomas," she said, "I saw the announcement. The Caroline Bennett Foundation." There was something in her voice Tom couldn't quite identify. Not anger, not approval, something more complicated. "It's what Carrie wanted," Tom said carefully. "I know. I received a letter from her. After she died, her lawyer delivered it according to her instructions." Tom waited. "She told me what she was planning," Victoria continued. "The test, the conditions, the foundation. She told me she was doing it because she believed you were strong enough, and because she knew I would try to control everything if given the chance." "That sounds like Carrie." "She was right," Victoria said quietly. "About all of it. I watched you these past 18 months. Watched you struggle. Watched you accept help when you needed it. Watched you raise my grandchildren into remarkable young people." The admission cost her something. Tom could hear it in her voice. "I was wrong about you, Thomas. I've been wrong about you from the beginning. Carolyn saw what I refused to see. That character matters more than credentials. That love matters more than money." Tom sat down, the phone pressed to his ear, trying to process this version of Victoria. Humble, vulnerable, almost human. "I'd like to help," she continued, "with the foundation. Not on the board. I understand why Caroline wouldn't want that, but perhaps as a volunteer. I have time, and I think I need to learn what my daughter understood, what you've been living." The old Tom would have said yes immediately, grateful for the olive branch, eager to restore family peace. But the new Tom, forged through 18 months of necessity, understood the difference between reconciliation and capitulation. I need to think about it, he said, and I need to talk to Sam and Abby. They get a say in this. Of course, Victoria said. And Thomas, regardless of your decision, I want you to know, I'm proud of what you've built. Caroline would be too. After she hung up, Tom sat in the unfinished office and thought about forgiveness, about whether people could really change, about whether Victoria was capable of the kind of transformation she claimed. Richard called an hour later. His voice was different from Victoria's, quieter, more certain. I'm not asking, he said. I'm telling you, I'd like to help with the foundation. Physical work, construction, whatever needs doing. Tom remembered Richard's testimony at the custody hearing, the moment when he had chosen truth over loyalty to his wife, the crack in the Westfield facade that had ultimately saved Tom's family. Why, Tom asked? Because I stood silent too long, Richard said. While Victoria controlled everything, while Caroline felt she had to choose between her family and her values, while you struggled to prove something you should never have had to prove. He paused. I can't fix the past, but I can help build something better for the future, if you'll let me. Tom thought about the renovation work still needed, the heavy lifting, the skilled labor that would cost money they could spend on programs instead. When can you start? He asked. The transformation of the community center took 2 months. Richard showed up every weekend in work clothes, his expensive suits left at home. He learned to use power tools, carried lumber, painted walls, asked questions instead of giving orders, worked alongside contractors who didn't know his name or his net worth. Tom watched his father-in-law become someone different, someone humbler, someone who found value in honest labor rather than corporate achievement. The work was changing Richard the way poverty had changed Tom, breaking down false assumptions, revealing what mattered underneath. One Saturday, as they installed shelving in the food pantry, Richard set down his drill and looked at Tom. I failed Caroline, he said, not just at the end, but her whole life. I let Victoria control everything. The schools she attended, the friends she could have, the expectations placed on her. I told myself I was being supportive, but I was being a coward. Tom waited. She chose you, Richard continued, because you were everything I wasn't. Strong enough to stand up for what you believed. Brave enough to build a life on your own terms. She saw in you what I should have been. You're here now, Tom said. That counts for something. Richard nodded slowly. I hope it counts enough. The grand opening was planned for a Saturday in early December. Tom had initially wanted something small, a ribbon cutting, a few speeches, nothing fancy. But Sophia convinced him otherwise. People need to see this, she argued. They need to know what's available. Make it a celebration, a community event. So they did. Food trucks donated by local restaurants, face painting for kids, tours of the facility, information tables about services, music from a neighborhood band, everything designed to welcome rather than intimidate. The turnout exceeded every expectation. Families from the neighborhood, people who had helped Tom during his 18 months of struggle, teachers from the school, members of Father Patrick's parish. Margaret Chen brought half her alterations shop customers. Sophia came with Isabella and a group of other single mothers she had connected with through the PTA. Victoria arrived mid-morning, not in her typical designer clothes, but dressed simply, ready to work rather than be seen. She approached Tom with the careful uncertainty of someone navigating unfamiliar territory. I'd like to help, she said. Where do you need me? Tom directed her to the welcome table where Keisha was managing intake forms and questions. He watched Victoria settle in beside the social worker, watched her listen to people's stories, watched her face soften with something that might have been empathy if given time to grow. She's trying, Sophia observed, appearing at his elbow with coffee. That has to mean something. It does, Tom agreed. I'm just not sure what yet. The memorial room was the last space to be completed. Tom had saved it for last. Unable to quite finish the place where Caroline's story would be told, where her photograph would hang, where visitors would understand that the foundation existed because a dying woman had believed in transformation. Abby had created a mural, abstract but powerful, showing a house breaking apart and rebuilding into something stronger. The art captured exactly what their family had experienced, the destruction that preceded reconstruction, the pain that enabled growth. Mom would love this, Sam said, studying his sister's work with the analytical eye that made him good at math. but sometimes missed emotional subtleties. I hope so, Abby replied softly. Tom hung Caroline's photograph beside the mural. Not a formal portrait, but a candid shot of her laughing, really laughing, the way she had when they were first dating and everything seemed possible. Underneath the photo, a plaque with words Tom had written and rewritten a dozen times. Carolyn Bennett believed that wealth was a responsibility, not a privilege. She believed in dignity over charity, in partnership over pity, in helping people build better lives rather than simply surviving hard times. This foundation honors her vision and her faith that love and character matter more than money. As the opening day wound down and people filtered out with information packets and hope, Tom stood in the memorial room and felt Caroline's presence stronger than he had in months. Did I do okay, he asked the photograph. Did I prove what you needed me to prove? The answer came not from the photo, but from the sounds of the building. Families making appointments, kids playing in the art therapy room, volunteers scheduling their hours, people helping people without judgment or superiority. This was what Caroline had envisioned. This was what 18 months of struggle had been building toward. Not just survival, but transformation. Not just endurance, but growth. Tom's phone buzzed, a text from Sophia. Beautiful day, beautiful foundation, beautiful vision. Proud of you. He smiled and typed back. Couldn't have done it without community, without people who believed when I couldn't. That's what makes it real, she replied. That's what makes it last. Tom looked around the memorial room one last time, at Caroline's photograph, at Abby's mural, at the plaque with its simple truth. Then he turned off the lights and locked the door and walked out into the December evening where his children waited. The proving ground had done its work. What remained was the living, the building, the helping, the daily choice to honor Caroline's memory, not through grief, but through action. And Tom Bennett, once a man who doubted his worth, now knew exactly what he was worth. Not in dollars, but in character forged through fire, in love that survived loss, in the certainty that he was enough because he had proven it to the only person who mattered, himself. 4 months had passed since Robert Matthews sat in Tom Bennett's small kitchen and explained the truth about Carrie's trust. 4 months of processing what it meant that his wife had orchestrated an elaborate test not to punish him, but to prove to the world, to her mother, and most importantly to himself, that he was enough exactly as he was. 4 months of planning, organizing, and learning what it meant to steward wealth with purpose rather than simply possess it. The foundation had been incorporated, the board assembled, the mission statement written and rewritten until it captured exactly what Carrie had envisioned. But on this cold morning in late February, as snow fell soft and silent over the house on Maple Street, Tom woke to find Abby standing at his bedroom door, holding her sketchbook against her chest like armor. Can't sleep, she said. Tom checked the clock. 5:43. He had been up until past midnight reviewing foundation documents, trying to understand the difference between operating expenses and program costs, between restricted and unrestricted funds, between all the 1,000 technical details that turned good intentions into actual impact. Come here, he said, and she climbed onto the bed, curling against him the way she had when she was small and thunderstorms frightened her. I keep thinking about what Mom did, Abby said quietly. Setting up all those rules about the money, making you prove you could take care of us without help. It feels mean. Tom had wrestled with the same thought through the long months since the revelation. There was a part of him that felt manipulated, tested, put through trials that could have been avoided if Carrie had just been honest with him. But there was another part, growing stronger with each passing day, that understood what she had really given him. Your mom knew something I didn't know about myself, he said carefully. She knew I would always doubt whether I was good enough for you and Sam, whether I could provide the life you deserved, whether I measured up to what the Westfield name could offer. He felt Abby shift against him, listening. So she created a situation where I had to prove it. Not to her, she already believed in me, but to myself. And to your grandmother, who needed to see that love and character matter more than money. Abby was quiet for a long moment. Her fingers traced patterns on the quilt Margaret had given them, the one that smelled like lavender in old stories. Did it work, she asked. Do you believe it now? Tom thought about the 18 months they had survived together, the house they had rebuilt with their own hands, the community that had embraced them, the small victories and hard lessons, the moment in the courtroom when Richard had stood up and told the truth, the look on Victoria's face when the judge denied her petition, the slow transformation he had seen in himself. From a man who doubted his worth to a man who knew with certainty that he was exactly the father his children needed. "Yeah," he said, "I think I do." The kitchen was cold in the pre-dawn darkness. Tom made coffee in the percolator that still sounded like it was digesting gravel and watched through the window as the neighborhood slowly came to life. Mr. Peterson, 2 houses down, leaving for his early shift at the hospital, the Rodriguez family's porch light clicking on, Margaret's shop lights illuminating the sidewalk below her apartment. This was home now, not the grand house they had been forced to leave, not the life of ease and privilege that Victoria had wanted for her grandchildren, but this neighborhood with its ordinary people and extraordinary kindness. This street where everyone knew each other's names and looked out for each other's children. This community that had welcomed them when they had nothing and asked for nothing in return. Sam appeared in the doorway, already dressed for school even though they had another hour before they needed to leave. He had developed the habit of waking early, spending the quiet morning hours working on math problems or coding projects or whatever currently captured his relentless curiosity. At 12 years old, he had grown 3 inches in the past year, and his voice had started to crack in that awkward way that marked the beginning of adolescence. "So we're rich now," he said. It wasn't a question. Tom poured him a glass of orange juice, still the cheap kind from concentrate, because habits formed over 22 months of careful budgeting didn't disappear overnight. "The trust is worth a lot of money," Tom confirmed, "but there are conditions, rules about how we can use it, and I haven't decided yet what we're going to do." Sam sat at the kitchen table, the one they had bought secondhand and refinished together, and looked at his father with eyes that seemed older than 12. "Are we going to move?" The question hit harder than Tom expected. He thought about the house on Maple Street with its quirks and imperfections, the bedroom where Sam had built shelves for his books, the window seat where Abby spent hours sketching, the front steps Tom had rebuilt with his own hands, the garden plot where they had planted vegetables last spring and learned together how much work it took to grow food. "Do you want to move?" Tom asked. Sam shook his head. "I like it here. I like that when something breaks, we fix it ourselves. I like that our neighbors are regular people who don't care if my backpack is from a thrift store or if my shoes aren't the newest style." He took a sip of juice, considering his words carefully the way he considered everything. "At my old school, everyone was always trying to prove they were richer or smarter or better than everyone else. Here, people just try to be good at the things they care about. That seems more important." Tom felt something tight and painful in his chest. Pride, yes, but also recognition. His son had learned in 22 months what some people never learned in a lifetime. That character was built through adversity, not inherited through privilege. That community mattered more than status. That the size of your house said nothing about the size of your heart. "We're staying," Tom said. "We'll use the money to help other people, the way people helped us." The foundation had been Carrie's idea, laid out in the documents Robert had shown him 4 months ago. The Caroline Bennett Foundation, dedicated to supporting families in crisis, families dealing with medical emergencies or job loss or the death of a spouse, families who needed help but didn't know where to find it, families who needed someone to believe in them the way Margaret and Father Patrick and Sophia and so many others had believed in Tom. The paperwork was complex. Robert had spent hours walking Tom through the legal structure, the tax implications, the reporting requirements. The trust was set up to distribute a certain percentage each year to charitable causes. Tom would serve as executive director. He could draw a modest salary for the administrative work, but the bulk of the money would go to helping others. There were also provisions for Sam and Abby, college funds that would cover any school they wanted to attend, money for artistic pursuits or academic competitions or whatever dreams they developed. But they couldn't access the principal until they had earned their first $50,000 on their own. Carrie had been adamant about that. She wanted them to know the pride of building something themselves before they inherited something built for them. Tom had read that provision multiple times, each time feeling the ghost of his wife's presence more strongly. She had thought of everything, anticipated every scenario, built safeguards against the entitled mindset that destroyed so many wealthy families. The school day passed in the comfortable rhythm of teaching that Tom had missed during the chaos of the previous year. His students were engaged. The lesson on the Constitutional Convention sparked the kind of debate that reminded him why he had chosen this profession. During lunch, Sofia Martinez found him in his classroom, grading papers while eating a sandwich he had packed that morning. I heard, she said, settling into the student desk beside his. About the trust. The whole school's buzzing with it. Tom set down his red pen. Of course they were. Victoria's custody petition had been semi-public record. The revelation of the trust would have followed naturally. He wondered how the story was being told, whether he came across as lucky or scheming or simply foolish for not having known about his wife's wealth. How are you handling it? Sophia asked. Her directness was one of the things he valued about their friendship. It had grown steadily over the past months, built on shared coffee breaks and conversations about teaching and the kind of easy companionship that sometimes develops between people who have both survived hard things. Her daughter Isabella had become friends with Abby, the two of them bonding over art projects and the shared experience of having only one parent. I don't know yet, he admitted. Part of me is angry that Carrie didn't just tell me. Part of me is grateful she trusted me enough to go through with her plan. Part of me doesn't know how to process any of it. Sophia nodded. When my ex left, he cleaned out our joint account on his way out of the door. Took everything we had saved. Everything I thought was ours. And you know what the worst part was? What? I felt stupid, like I should have seen it coming, like everyone else knew something I was too naive to understand. She picked at a piece of tape on the desk, the same nervous gesture Tom had seen dozens of times. But eventually I realized something. Trust isn't stupid. Hope isn't naive. Believing the best about people you love isn't a character flaw. Sometimes people disappoint us. Sometimes they surprise us. But closing your heart to protect yourself from disappointment means closing it to everything good too. Tom thought about that while the clock on the wall ticked away the lunch period, about the choice between cynicism and hope, about whether it was better to guard yourself against hurt or remain open to connection, even when connection sometimes meant pain. Carrie could have told me, he said, could have prepared me, could have made the last year easier. But then you wouldn't have learned what you needed to learn, that you're enough, that you can provide for your children through character and determination even without money, that the Westfield name doesn't define your worth. Sophia stood, smoothing her skirt. She gave you a gift, Tom. Maybe not the gift you would have chosen, but the one you needed. That afternoon, Tom drove to the address Robert had given him 3 months ago. The Caroline Bennett Foundation needed a physical location, and there was a building available in a neighborhood that straddled the line between working class and struggling. The building had been a community center once, decades ago, before budget cuts and changing demographics had shuttered it. Now it sat empty, waiting for someone to give it purpose again. Tom stood on the sidewalk studying the structure. 2 stories. Brick facade that had seen better days but was structurally sound. Large windows that would let in good light. A parking lot that needed resurfacing. A sign that hung askew announcing programs that no longer existed. The real estate agent appeared with keys and enthusiasm. She launched into her pitch about square footage and zoning and comparable properties. Tom only half listened. He was imagining what the space could become. Offices where social workers could meet with families. A food pantry in the large room that had once held after-school programs. Art therapy space for children dealing with grief or trauma. Computer stations where people could search for jobs or file unemployment claims or connect with resources. Can we go inside, he asked. The interior smelled like dust and old dreams. The carpet was worn through in patches. The walls needed paint. The fluorescent lights flickered and buzzed. But the structure was solid, the layout was functional, and most importantly, it felt right. Tom walked through each room, his footsteps echoing in the emptiness, and felt Carrie's presence so strongly it almost hurt. She had chosen this, had researched locations and programs and models for effective charitable work, had left detailed notes about what she hoped the foundation would become. Not a vanity project where rich people felt good about themselves by writing checks, but a real organization that met people where they were and helped them build better lives. I'll take it, he told the agent. She blinked. Don't you want to see other options? Compare prices. Have an inspector look at it. I'll have it inspected, but this is the one. This is where we're supposed to be. The paperwork took weeks, but Tom had learned patience through necessity. He used the time to interview contractors, get estimates, plan the renovation that would transform the empty shell into a functional space. The contractor he chose was a man named Jesus Rodriguez, recommended by Margaret. Jesus ran a small family construction company and understood working with budgets and timelines. When Tom explained what the foundation would do, Jesus had nodded slowly. My sister, he said, 3 years ago, her husband died, left her with 4 kids and medical bills she couldn't pay. She lost the house, had to move in with family. Nobody helped. Nobody even asked if she was okay, just assumed she would figure it out. He looked at the building plans Tom had spread across the table. This would have saved her, would have given her time to breathe, to figure out next steps without losing everything first. Tom hired him on the spot. The renovation began in early December, and what should have taken 6 months was compressed into 10 weeks through sheer force of will. Jesus called in favors from every tradesman he knew: electricians working at cost, plumbers donating weekends, painters who believed in what the foundation represented. The building transformed from abandoned shell to welcoming space faster than Tom had thought possible. He spent every weekend there, working alongside the crew when he could, learning as he went. Sam came too, fascinated by the construction process, asking questions about load-bearing walls and electrical systems and plumbing codes. Jesus answered every question with patience, clearly enjoying having an apprentice so eager to learn. Abby set up her sketch pad in corners, documenting the transformation. Her drawings showed the building at different stages: empty and abandoned, gutted and raw, slowly coming back to life. She had a gift for capturing not just what things looked like, but what they felt like. The promise of the space, the hope embedded in the work. One Saturday in early January, Richard Westfield appeared at the construction site. He was dressed differently than Tom had ever seen him: jeans and a work shirt instead of his usual suit, work boots instead of polished leather shoes. He looked uncomfortable but determined. "I'd like to help," Richard said. "If you'll have me." Tom studied his father-in-law, the man who had stood silent while Victoria threw them out, the man who had eventually found his voice and testified on Tom's behalf in court, the man who was now trying, awkwardly but genuinely, to build a relationship with his grandchildren. "You know anything about construction?" Tom asked. "Not a thing, but I can learn. And I can write checks, but I'm guessing you'd rather I pick up a hammer." Tom handed him work gloves. "Start with clearing debris from the back room. It's not glamorous, but it needs doing." Richard took the gloves without complaint and went to work. He was slow. He took breaks more often than the younger men, but he didn't quit. And when Sam came over to show him a better way to use the dolly for moving broken drywall, Richard listened like a student, humble and attentive. The foundation's first hire was a woman named Keisha Johnson. She was 42, mother of 3, and had spent 10 years working in social services before budget cuts eliminated her position. She knew the systems, knew which agencies could help with housing or food or medical care, knew how to navigate bureaucracy on behalf of people who didn't have the time or knowledge to do it themselves. Tom interviewed her in the not-quite-finished office space, sitting on folding chairs because the furniture hadn't arrived yet. "Why do you want this job?" he asked. Keisha looked around the space, taking in the fresh paint and the new carpet and the promise of what it could become. "Because I've been where these families are going to be," she said. "I've had to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. I've had to take my kids to the emergency room because I couldn't afford a regular doctor. I've had to accept help from people, and I know how it feels to be judged for needing it." She met his eyes directly. "This foundation can do one of two things. It can be another place where people have to prove they're deserving before they get help. Or it can be a place where people are treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their circumstances. I want to help build the second kind." "You're hired," Tom said. The second hire was Marcus Thompson, a financial counselor who had grown up in public housing and worked his way through community college while raising his younger siblings after their mother died. He specialized in helping families build credit, create budgets, and escape the poverty traps that kept people struggling even when they worked multiple jobs. The third hire was Anna Kowalski, an art therapist who had used creative expression to help her own children process the trauma of domestic violence. She would run programs for kids dealing with grief, divorce, abuse, or any of the 100 ways childhood could be disrupted by adult problems. Together, the team began to take shape. Not a hierarchy with Tom at the top dispensing charity, but a collective of people who understood struggle from lived experience and wanted to help others find their way through. Patricia Williams arrived in mid-January to conduct what she called operational training. She was a Black woman in her early 60s with silver locks and the kind of direct gaze that suggested she didn't suffer fools gladly. She had spent 30 years running charitable organizations and knew all the pitfalls that trapped well-meaning but inexperienced directors. Your wife did good preliminary work, Patricia said, reviewing the documents Tom had prepared. But you're thinking too small. You have resources that could help thousands of families. We need to scale this appropriately without losing the personal touch that makes it effective. Over 3 intensive days, Patricia walked the team through organizational models, board governance, program evaluation, fund management, strategic planning. Tom's head spun with acronyms and concepts he barely understood, but underneath the jargon was a clear message. If he wanted to honor Carrie's vision, he needed to think bigger while staying grounded in the values that mattered. Start with what you know, Patricia advised. You're a teacher. You understand how to identify struggling students and connect them with resources. The foundation should work the same way. Find families in crisis. Assess their actual needs, not what you assume they need. Provide targeted support that addresses root causes, not just symptoms. She pulled out case studies, organizations that had done this work well, organizations that had failed spectacularly. The difference, she explained, was always the same. The successful ones listened more than they assumed. They treated beneficiaries as partners, not charity cases. They measured outcomes, not just outputs. This is what your wife wanted, Patricia said. Real impact, sustainable change, not just feel-good gestures that make donors feel important while leaving recipients feeling diminished. The phone call from Victoria came on a Tuesday evening in late January. Tom almost didn't answer, but curiosity won over caution. I heard about the building, she said without preamble. The foundation. News travels fast. There was silence on the line. Tom waited, having learned that silence was sometimes the most powerful response. I owe you an apology, Victoria finally said. The words came out stiff and formal, as if she was reading from a script. But there was something underneath the formality, something that might have been genuine emotion if Victoria remembered how to access such things. For what specifically? Tom asked. Because there was a lot to apologize for underestimating you, for assuming that love and determination weren't enough to raise children well, for trying to control a thing that was never mine to control. She took a breath, and when she spoke again, her voice was different, quieter, more vulnerable than he had ever heard it. Caroline knew me better than I knew myself. She knew I would try to take over, try to fix things by throwing money at them, try to remake you and the children into something that fit my vision of what a family should be. So she made it impossible, Tom said. Yes, and she was right to do it. Because watching you these past months, seeing what you've built with nothing but hard work and community support, I've learned something I should have known all along. What's that? That my daughter chose wisely, and that the best thing I can do for my grandchildren is learn to respect the man their mother loved. Tom sat down at the kitchen table, the phone pressed to his ear, trying to process this version of Victoria. Humble, self-aware, almost human. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Victoria continued. I don't deserve that, but I am asking for a chance to be part of their lives, to support the foundation without controlling it, to be the grandmother Caroline would have wanted me to be. The old Tom would have said yes immediately, would have been grateful for the olive branch and eager to restore peace. But the new Tom, forged in the fires of the past 2 years, knew better than to accept easy reconciliation. I need to think about it, he said, and I need to talk to Sam and Abby. They get a say in this. Of course. But Victoria, if you're serious about being part of their lives, it has to be on our terms. No criticism, no trying to buy their affection, no undermining my decisions. We're a family and I'm the head of it. Can you accept that? Another long silence, then quietly yes. After they hung up, Tom sat in the kitchen and thought about forgiveness, about whether it was possible to repair relationships broken by betrayal and control, about whether Victoria was capable of real change or just making promises she couldn't keep. Sam appeared in the doorway, his ability to sense when important things were happening fully engaged. That was Grandma Victoria, he said. How did you know? You get this look when you talk to her, like you're trying to solve a problem that doesn't have one right answer. Tom smiled despite himself. Accurate. What did she want? To apologize, to ask if she can be part of our lives. Sam considered this with the seriousness he brought to all important questions. His face had lost some of its childhood roundness, becoming more angular, more like Tom's. Do you believe her? I don't know. People can change, but change is hard and it takes time. We'll have to see if she means it. I think maybe we should give her a chance, Sam said after a moment. But like, we watch and see if she really means it. That seems fair, right? When did you get so wise? Sam shrugged. When we had to figure out hard stuff together. The weight of that truth settled over the kitchen. Tom thought about all the ways the past 2 years had forced his children to grow up faster than they should have. The adult worries they had carried, the mature decisions they had made, the resilience they had developed not because they wanted to, but because they had to. I'm sorry, Tom said, that you had to grow up so fast, that I couldn't protect you from all of this. Sam looked at him with those eyes that seemed older than 12. Dad, if you had protected us from everything hard, we wouldn't have learned anything important. Yeah, it was tough sometimes. Yeah, I wish Mom was still here. But we're stronger now, and we know who we are. That matters more than being comfortable. The grand opening was set for January 15th, a Saturday chosen because it allowed families to attend without missing work. Tom spent the week before in a state of controlled chaos. Final inspections, delivery of furniture and equipment, training sessions for volunteers. 1,000 small details that all needed to come together perfectly. The night before, he couldn't sleep. He walked through the building in the darkness, checking and rechecking that everything was ready. The food pantry stocked, the computer lab functional, the counseling offices welcoming, the children's art room bright and cheerful. He stood in what would become the memorial room, where Carrie's photo would hang, where her story would be told, where people would understand that this foundation existed because a woman who knew she was dying had chosen to invest in life. The letter she had left him was in his jacket pocket. He had carried it with him through all the months of planning and building. Sometimes he read it, sometimes just knowing it was there was enough. When the doors opened on that cold January morning, Tom wasn't sure anyone would come. But they came. They came in ones and twos at first, then in families, then in groups. They filled the lobby and the program rooms and the common areas. They asked questions and shared their own struggles and expressed relief that help existed without judgment. Victoria was there, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, working at the welcome table alongside Keisha. Tom watched her interact with a young mother who was clearly nervous about being there. Victoria's face was gentle, patient. She listened more than she talked. And when she gave the woman information about the Emergency Assistance Fund, she did it with respect rather than pity. Richard worked in this food pantry, helping stock shelves and organize donations. Margaret moved through the crowd like a benevolent force of nature, connecting people who needed help with people who could provide it. Father Patrick blessed the building and everyone in it. Sophia came with Isabella, both of them volunteering in the children's room. Sam gave tours of the computer lab he had helped design, explaining the coding classes and job search workshops that would be offered. Abby's artwork hung on the walls throughout the building, creating an atmosphere of warmth and hope. Her drawings told the story of transformation, of families struggling and surviving, of communities coming together, of broken things being made whole. That night, after everyone had left and the building was quiet again, Tom stood alone in the memorial room. He pulled out Carrie's letter and read it one more time. My dearest Tom, if you're reading this, you've made it through the hardest part. You've proven what I always knew, that you're strong enough, good enough, and loving enough to give our children everything that truly matters. The money is just a tool. What you've built with your hands and heart and character, that's the real inheritance. I'm so proud of you. I always was. Now go live. Love again. Teach our children that joy is possible even after grief. That's the greatest gift you can give me. All my love, Carrie. Tom folded the letter carefully and placed it in the frame that would hang beside her photo. Then he turned off the lights and locked the building and drove home through the winter darkness into the house on Maple Street where his children waited. They were still awake, both of them, sitting at the kitchen table with mugs of hot chocolate. Abby had been sketching. Sam had been reading, but they looked up when he came in, their faces questioning. How was it? Abby asked. It was good. Really good. People came. People who need help and people who want to help. The foundation is real now. It's not just an idea anymore. Sam nodded slowly. Mom would be happy. Yeah, Tom said, his throat tight. She would be. He sat down with them at the table. This table they had bought secondhand and refinished together. In this house they had rebuilt with their own hands. In this life they had constructed from loss and love and relentless determination. Outside, snow began to fall, covering the street in silent white. Inside, three people who had survived the worst and built something beautiful from the rubble sat together in the warm kitchen light. A family not broken by loss but refined by it, not diminished by struggle but strengthened through it. Tom looked at his children and saw the future, saw the people they were becoming, saw Carrie's legacy living on not in money or buildings, but in the values they carried, in the compassion they showed, in the strength they possessed. The proving ground had done its work, and what it had proven was something Carrie had known all along. That love was always enough. That character could not be bought or inherited, but only earned through the daily choice to keep showing up, keep trying, keep believing that better days were possible. The test was over. But the real work, the work of living fully and loving deeply and building a life of meaning and purpose, that work was just beginning. And Tom Bennett, once a man who doubted his own worth, now knew with absolute certainty that he was ready for whatever came next. 3 years had passed since the day Tom Bennett learned about Caroline's trust. 3 years since the revelation that had transformed grief into purpose and struggle into meaning. The calendar on the wall of his office at the Caroline Bennett Foundation marked another October morning, the kind of crisp autumn day that Caroline had loved best. Tom stood at the window of what had once been a neglected community center and was now a hub of hope for hundreds of families. Below, the parking lot was already filling with cars, morning intake appointments, job counseling sessions, art therapy for children who had lost parents or survived trauma. The building hummed with purposeful activity, every corner dedicated to helping people rebuild their lives with dignity. "Dad, you're going to be late for the board meeting." Tom turned to find Sam standing in the doorway. 15 years old now, tall enough to look his father almost in the eye, sharp enough to have already been accepted into an advanced mathematics program at Boston University for exceptional high school students, but still grounded enough to work weekends at the foundation, helping families navigate computer systems and filling out financial aid applications. "Just thinking," Tom said, "about Mom." It wasn't a question. Sam had developed an uncanny ability to read his father's moods, had learned that certain dates and certain weather patterns brought Caroline's memory closer to the surface. "Always about Mom," Tom admitted, wondering if we're doing this right, if she'd be proud. Sam walked into the office and stood beside his father at the window. Together they watched as Maria Santos pulled into the parking lot, the young widow they had helped 3 years ago, who had received emergency rent assistance and car repairs in connection to grief counseling, who had stabilized her life and was now volunteering twice a week, helping other families navigate the same systems that had once bewildered her. "She'd be proud," Sam said with certainty. "Look at what you've built, what we've built together." The board meeting convened in the conference room that had once been a storage closet. Robert Matthews sat at the head of the table, his role having evolved from lawyer to foundation president. Beside him sat Father Patrick O'Brien, representing community religious organizations. Margaret Chen, who had insisted she was too old for board service, but had accepted anyway. Sophia Martinez, now officially Tom's partner in life as well as mission. And Richard Westfield, whose transformation over 3 years had been as remarkable as anything the foundation had achieved. "The quarterly report shows continued growth," Robert began. "We've served 432 families this year. Emergency assistance provided to 218 households. Job placement support for 93 individuals. Educational scholarships awarded to 41 students." He paused, looking around the table. "But the numbers don't tell the whole story. Tom, would you share the update on the Harris family?" Tom opened his notes, though he didn't really need them. He knew every family's story by heart. "James Harris lost his job in March when his company downsized," he said. "He and his wife Jennifer have 3 kids. They came to us 2 weeks before losing their apartment. We provided rent assistance for 3 months while James retrained for a new career in HVAC repair. He started his new job last week, makes more than his previous position. The family is stable, and Jennifer has asked about volunteering in our childcare program." "That's the model working exactly as designed," Margaret observed. "Not just solving immediate crisis, but creating sustainable change." "Speaking of sustainable change," Sophia added, "I want to propose expanding our partnership with the school district. We've had remarkable success with the after-school tutoring program. 5 schools want to participate next year, but we'll need additional funding and volunteers." The discussion continued for another hour. Program expansions, budget allocations, volunteer recruitment, partnership opportunities. The kind of operational details that would have overwhelmed Tom 3 years ago, but now felt like second nature. Victoria Westfield's name appeared on the volunteer report. She had logged 140 hours over the past quarter, working intake, organizing the food pantry, listening to families tell stories that must have seemed alien to someone who had never struggled financially. "Your mother is quite remarkable," Father Patrick said to Richard during a break. "I've watched her transformation. It's genuine." Richard nodded slowly. "She's learning what Caroline tried to teach her years ago, that people aren't problems to be solved. They're human beings deserving respect regardless of their circumstances." After the meeting, Tom found Victoria in the food pantry, reorganizing shelves with the meticulous attention to detail she had once applied to charity galas and society events. "You don't have to do this," Tom said. "You've put in your hours for the month." Victoria looked up, her face softer than it had been 3 years ago. Lines of genuine emotion had replaced the careful mask of control. "I'm not doing it because I have to," she replied. "I'm doing it because I want to. Because every family I help, I think about how I could have helped you, should have helped you, but didn't because I was too proud to see what mattered." "You're helping now," Tom said. "That's what counts." Victoria set down the canned goods she had been stacking. "Thomas, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." Tom waited. "Do you think Caroline would forgive me for how I treated you, for trying to take the children, for everything?" Tom thought about the video message Caroline had left. Her understanding that Victoria would struggle. Her hope that the foundation might teach lessons words never could. "I think Carrie understood you better than you understood yourself," he said carefully. "I think she knew you were capable of change if given the right circumstances. This foundation, these families, this work, it's changing you the way poverty changed me, breaking down false assumptions, revealing what matters underneath." Victoria's eyes glistened. "I miss her so much. And I'm so sorry I didn't tell her that when I had the chance." "Tell her now," Tom suggested. "She's listening." The foundation's third anniversary gala was Sophia's idea. Tom had resisted initially. Galas felt like everything Caroline had rejected. Expensive events where wealthy people congratulated themselves for writing checks. But Sophia convinced him to reimagine the concept. "We'll hold it here," she proposed. "At the foundation, families we've helped will share their stories. Volunteers will be honored. The food will be simple but good. No tuxedos, no $500 plates. Just community celebrating community." So they did. The foundation was transformed with lights and decorations created by the children in the art therapy program. Tables borrowed from the church. Food prepared by a restaurant whose owner had once received emergency assistance from the foundation and now donated meals quarterly. 300 people filled the space. Families who had been helped. Volunteers who had given time. Community members who believed in the mission. Margaret Chen wore her best dress and held court at a table surrounded by people whose lives she had touched over 70 years of quiet generosity. Father Patrick gave the blessing, short, sincere, thanking God for the opportunity to serve and be served, for the reminder that helping others was the highest calling, for Caroline's vision that had made it all possible. Then came the stories. Maria Santos spoke first, her voice shaking but strong, about losing her husband, about drowning in medical bills and grief and fear, about walking through the foundation's doors certain she would be judged and instead finding respect. "They didn't just give me money," she said. "They gave me my dignity back. They treated me like a person who had hit hard times, not like a charity case. They helped me help myself, and now I get to do the same for other families." James Harris spoke next, about job loss and pride and the terror of not being able to provide for his children, about the foundation's job training program that had given him new skills and new purpose. "I came here broken," he said, "not just financially but emotionally. I had failed my family, or so I thought. But the people here helped me understand that asking for help isn't failure, it's courage. Now I have a career I'm proud of. And more importantly, I have hope again." One by one, families stood and shared. Stories of medical crises and job losses and domestic violence and immigration challenges and all the thousand ways life could knock you down. And story after story of the foundation helping them stand back up. Not through pity, but through partnership, through respect, through the radical notion that everyone deserves support regardless of their circumstances. Tom sat at a table with his family, Sam on one side, Abby on the other, Sophia beside him, her hand in his. Victoria and Richard across the table, listening with faces that showed how much they had learned in 3 years. When it was Tom's turn to speak, he walked to the microphone with notes he had prepared, but knew he wouldn't use. Some things needed to come from the heart. 3 years ago, he began, I stood in a lawyer's office and watched a video of my wife explaining why she had put our family through 18 months of struggle. I was angry, confused, certain that if she had just been honest, we could have avoided so much hardship. He paused. But I was wrong. The hardship was the point. Not because Caroline wanted us to suffer, but because she knew something I didn't. That character is forged through adversity. That you can't truly understand what people need until you've needed it yourself. That empathy isn't something you learn in a classroom. It's something you earn through experience. He gestured around the room. Every person working at this foundation has lived through hard times. Keisha knows what it's like to choose between rent and groceries. Marcus grew up in the poverty we're trying to help families escape. Anna survived domestic violence. Margaret lost her son to war. Father Patrick has walked with countless families through their darkest hours. Tom's voice grew stronger. We don't help people because we feel sorry for them. We help them because we remember being them. We remember the fear, the shame, the desperate hope that someone, somewhere would see our worth even when circumstances had stripped away our dignity. He looked directly at the families who had shared their stories. You honored us by letting us help. You trusted us when trust was hard. You showed courage when asking for help felt like failure. And now many of you are giving back, helping the next family who walks through our doors. That's the real success of this foundation. Not the money we distribute, but the community we build. The cycle of help that continues because everyone remembers being on both sides of need. The room was silent except for the sound of people crying quietly. Good tears, healing tears, the kind that come from being truly seen and understood. Tom finished by pulling a letter from his pocket, the one Caroline had written before she died, the one he had carried through 18 months of struggle and 3 years of building. My wife left me a letter, he said. In it, she wrote that love is the only thing that lasts, not money, not status, not comfort or security or any of the things we think we need. Just love. Love for family, love for community, love for the humanity we share regardless of our circumstances. He folded the letter carefully. This foundation is Caroline's love made tangible. It's her belief that people matter more than profits, that character matters more than credentials, that everyone deserves a chance to rebuild their life with dignity. If we honor her memory by living those values every day, then we've succeeded beyond any measure. The applause that followed was thunderous, but Tom barely heard it. He was looking at Abby's sketch pad where she had been drawing throughout the evening, a portrait of the room, all these people connected by threads of kindness and support. At the center, drawn in lighter pencil like a ghost but unmistakably present, was Caroline, watching, smiling, proud. Later, after most people had left, Tom found Richard on the foundation's front steps. His father-in-law sat alone, looking out at the neighborhood that had become so familiar over 3 years of weekend construction work and volunteer hours. Can I join you, Tom asked. Richard nodded. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city lights come on against the October darkness. I've been thinking about legacy, Richard said eventually. What we leave behind. I spent 40 years building a real estate empire, billions in property value, buildings with my family name on them. I thought that mattered. He turned to look at Tom. But this foundation, these families, this is a legacy worth having. Carolyn understood that. You understand it. I'm still learning. You're doing good work, Tom said. I'm trying to make up for lost time. For the years I stood silent while Victoria controlled everything. For the times I should have stood up for you and didn't. Richard's voice grew thick with emotion. I failed my daughter. Let her feel she had to choose between her family and her values. But I won't fail my grandchildren. I'll spend whatever time I have left showing them that it's never too late to become a better person. Tom put a hand on Richard's shoulder. They're watching, learning. They see you choosing to change. That's a powerful lesson. Sam and Abby emerged from the building, both carrying boxes of leftover decorations. 15 and tall and confident in ways that came from knowing they were loved unconditionally. Ready to go home, Abby asked. Home. The house on Maple Street that they had rebuilt together. That they chose to keep living in despite having access to wealth that could buy mansions. That represented everything Caroline had wanted them to understand about what mattered. Yeah, Tom said, let's go home. Sophia appeared with her jacket and her daughter Isabella. Over 3 years, the two families had intertwined. Isabella and Abby were inseparable. Sam mentored Isabella in math. The six of them had become something new. Not replacing what was lost, but building something meaningful from what remained. They drove through Boston in 2 cars. Tom and his kids in the aging sedan. He still drove because it ran fine and replacing it seemed wasteful. Sophia and Isabella following in their own modest vehicle. No luxury, no excess, just people who had learned that enough was a feast. The house on Maple Street glowed with warm light as they pulled into the driveway. The porch Tom had rebuilt still stood solid. The shutters he had repainted still hung straight. The garden where they had grown vegetables still showed signs of the season's harvest. Inside, the walls were covered with Abby's artwork, documentation of their journey, the broken house rebuilding, the family growing stronger through adversity, the community coming together. Every piece told part of their story. Sam disappeared upstairs to finish homework. Abby settled at the kitchen table with her sketchpad, already working on a new piece for the foundation's memorial room. Sophia made tea while Tom checked the mail and the messages and all the small, ordinary tasks that made up a life. His phone buzzed with an email, a message from someone named Jennifer Davis. The subject line read, "Thank you. Mr. Bennett, I'm writing to thank you for saving my family. 6 months ago, my husband died suddenly. Heart attack. No warning. We had 3 kids and medical bills and a mortgage I couldn't pay alone. I was going to lose everything. But a friend told me about your foundation. I was so ashamed to ask for help. I've always been independent, always taken care of myself. Asking felt like admitting I had failed. But your people didn't make me feel like a failure. Keisha listened to my story without judgment. Marcus helped me reorganize my finances. Anna worked with my kids through their grief. You gave us emergency assistance and job training, and most importantly, you gave us hope. I start a new job Monday. Better pay than my previous position. My kids are seeing a counselor. We're going to make it. Because of you. Because your wife believed in helping people with dignity. I can never repay what you've done, but I can promise to pay it forward, to help the next person who needs what I needed, to be part of the community of care you've built. Thank you. Thank you for seeing my family's worth when we couldn't see it ourselves." Tom read the email twice. Then he forwarded it to the board members with a simple note. "This is why we do what we do." Sophia found him still sitting at the kitchen table, staring at his phone. "Good news or bad?" she asked. "Good," he said. "Really good. Just another reminder that Caroline knew what she was doing." Sophia sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. The physical intimacy had grown slowly over 3 years. Careful, respectful of memory, but real and deepening. She usually did, Sophia observed, know what she was doing. Tom looked at the woman who had become his partner, who understood his commitment to the foundation, who shared his values about raising children and building community and living simply despite having resources, who loved him not despite his scars but because of them. "I'm thinking about asking you something," he said, "something important, but I want to make sure the timing is right." Sophia smiled. "The timing will never be perfect. Life doesn't work that way. But if your question is what I think it is, my answer is yes." Tom laughed. "I haven't asked yet. You will when you're ready, and I'll say yes because I love you, because I love your kids, because I believe in what we're building together. And because Caroline would want you to be happy." She stood, kissed the top of his head, and went to help Abby with her art project. Tom sat alone in the kitchen and thought about the journey. From the funeral in the rain to this moment of quiet contentment. From the eviction and the struggle to the foundation and the purpose. From questioning his worth to knowing beyond doubt that he was enough. His phone buzzed again. A text from Robert Matthews. "Reminder, trust documents require review at the 5-year mark. Schedule a meeting soon to discuss long-term planning." 5 years. It seemed impossible that 5 years had passed since Caroline's death. 5 years since the letter and the test in the beginning of the proving ground. But the calendar didn't lie. Tom looked around the kitchen, at the table where they had eaten countless meals, at the refrigerator covered with Abby's artwork and Sam's academic achievements, at the window where morning light would stream in tomorrow, starting another day of purpose and meaning. This house would never be featured in architectural magazines, would never impress visitors with its size or luxury. But it held something more valuable than square footage or expensive finishes. It held love, memory, the evidence of a family that had survived loss and emerged stronger. The proving ground had done its work, had tested and refined and revealed, had shown Tom that he possessed everything he needed inside himself. That character forged through adversity was worth more than wealth inherited through luck. That the love he shared with his children and built with Sophia and extended through the foundation was the only legacy that truly mattered. Caroline's photograph sat on the mantel, not hidden away like a shrine, but present like a member of the family. Tom walked over and studied her smile, that genuine joy she had brought to everything. "We did okay," he told the photograph. "The kids are remarkable. The foundation is helping hundreds of families. Victoria is actually trying to be a better person." Richard found his voice. "And I finally understand what you were trying to teach me." He paused. "I'm going to ask Sophia to marry me. I think you'd like that. I think you'd like her. She makes me happy in a different way than you did. Not better or worse, just different. And I think that's okay." The photograph didn't answer, but Tom felt Caroline's approval like a presence in the room. She had told him to live, to love again, to find joy after grief. Asking Sophia to marry him was honoring Caroline's final wish. Abby appeared in the doorway. "Dad, can you help me with this perspective? I can't get the building to look right." Tom joined his daughter at the kitchen table, looked at her sketch of the foundation, helped her adjust the angles so the structure stood solid and welcoming. "What's this for?" he asked. "The 5-year anniversary," she said. "I want to create something that shows how the foundation has grown. All the families helped, all the volunteers who give their time, all the people who believe in what Mom started." She looked up at him with Caroline's green eyes. "Do you think she knows how much good has come from what she did?" Tom pulled his daughter close. "I think she knows. I think she's watching. And I think she's proud of all of us." That night, after the kids were in bed and Sophia had gone home with Isabella, Tom sat alone in the living room and composed an email to Robert Matthews. "Ready to schedule that 5-year review," he wrote. "Also, I need your advice on something personal. Engagement rings, not too expensive, but meaningful. Any recommendations?" He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Then he pulled out a notebook and began writing. A letter to Caroline, not to the ghost or the memory, but to the woman he had loved and lost and learned from. "Dear Carrie," he wrote, 5 years since you left. 5 years since you set all this in motion. I was so angry at you at first. For the test, for the secrets, for making me prove something I thought you should have just believed. But I get it now. You did believe. That was never in question. The test wasn't for you, it was for me, to prove to myself what you already knew. That I'm enough, that I can provide for our children through character and determination. That wealth doesn't define worth. The foundation is thriving. We've helped over 1,000 families in 3 years. People are rebuilding their lives with dignity, and we're just getting started. Sam and Abby are incredible. You'd be so proud. Sam is already thinking about college, mathematics or economics, or something equally brilliant. Abby's art is being shown in real galleries. She has your eye for beauty and your heart for helping others. Your parents are changing, slowly but genuinely. Victoria volunteers every week, really volunteers, gets her hands dirty and her heart engaged. Richard found peace in honest work. They're learning what you tried to teach them years ago. And Carrie, I've met someone. Her name is Sophia. She's kind and strong, and she understands the mission. She loves the kids. She believes in the foundation. She makes me happy in a way I didn't think was possible after losing you. I'm going to ask her to marry me. I hope that's okay. I hope you understand that loving her doesn't mean loving you less. It just means I'm finally living the way you told me to. Really living. Thank you for the test. Thank you for believing in me even when I doubted myself. Thank you for creating something that matters. Something that will help families long after we're all gone. I miss you every day, but I'm not drowning in grief anymore. I'm swimming toward purpose. And I think that's what you wanted all along. Love always, Tom. He folded the letter and placed it in the box where he kept Carolyn's things. The wedding ring, the journal, the video message, the accumulated evidence of a love that had been tested and proven true. Then he went upstairs to check on his children. Found Sam asleep with a math textbook on his chest. Abby curled up with her sketchbook, having fallen asleep mid-drawing. He kissed them both gently. His children. The living proof that love survived loss. That family persevered through hardship. That character mattered more than any inheritance. The house settled around him with familiar creaks and groans, the sounds of a structure that had been broken and rebuilt. That bore the scars of transformation. That stood solid because people had cared enough to do the work of restoration. Tom stood in the hallway between his children's rooms and felt the weight of 5 years, the grief and the growth, the struggle and the success, the testing and the proving, all of it necessary, all of it leading to this moment of hard-earned peace. The proving ground was complete. What remained was the living, the building, the helping, the daily choice to honor Caroline's memory through action rather than sorrow, to be the man she had believed he could become, to raise the children she had trusted him to protect, to love again because she had taught him that love was always worth the risk. Tom returned to his bedroom and looked out the window at the street where they had rebuilt their lives, at the neighborhood that had welcomed them when they had nothing, at the community that had taught him the difference between charity and care. Tomorrow he would go to work at the foundation, would help families rebuild their lives, would serve on boards and manage budgets and honor Carolyn's vision, would be a father and a partner and a man who had been tested and not found wanting. But tonight, he just needed to stand in this quiet house and feel grateful for the journey, for the destination, for the proving that had revealed his worth. The test was over. The ground was proven, and Tom Bennett knew beyond any doubt that he was exactly who he needed to be. Enough,